why it's really important to have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this Degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about the permanent loss.
Really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, and D-gentlemen of all ages, welcome to the show. I am Zenith, coming back to you live after what I hope is a very happy Thanksgiving for everybody out there. I know I had a great time myself. Had my brother over for a little bit, had friends over, and we actually cooked the whole turkey and did the whole 9 yards. So it was fun to do it at my place this year. Had a great time. Joining me tonight, I have my friend Agent Jay. How's it going, my man? How was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was excellent. Is my audio coming in through OKC?
You are good, my man.
Wonderful. Yes, sir. Thanksgiving was wonderful. We had it a little bit earlier during the week. I think I mentioned this sometime during the when I was doing the streams for the Telegram group, and I told them that we have a Friendsgiving every single year because a bunch of my close friends here, they're from out of state, and so they don't really have family here, and so they don't have a lot of folks to celebrate with during the holidays, in particular during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then New Year's. So me and the wife have kind of made it a tradition to invite some of our close friends here, so that they're not so alone in they're not so alone here in Arizona. But it was wonderful. We had a lot of food. My wife loves to cook a ton of food. Like she cooks for like 100 people, and let's just say everybody went home with multiple trays of food, and we still had multiple trays left over for us to consume during the week. But it was absolutely amazing. It was a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm glad that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving as well. I certainly hope that everybody else in the Telegram and everybody else in crypto space had a wonderful Thanksgiving on their end. And aside from that, what's not to love? It's Q4 of the halving year. Bitcoin dominance finally starting to fall down. We will go over some of those charts later on today because, not to toot our own horn, but we call these timelines pretty well. And so a little bit of a pat on the back to us and the rest of the team over the Degen Roundtable, because we've been harping on everybody about Bitcoin dominance, about ETH Bitcoin, about how to position yourselves well when the inevitable altcoin season comes, and it is already upon us. So we're going to go over all of that good stuff and some key pieces of news to be excited about. But man, it's certainly been a crazy week, a crazy and good ending to the month of November for crypto as a whole. So golf clap to us and to everybody else who held through the turbulent waters that was March through September of 2024, because you have made it, my friends, and it's just time to sit back and enjoy the ride up all the way into 2025.
That's true. I think I'm not going to say it's going to be smooth sailing, but I think there are going to be some good times ahead, and I'm glad to see it. As of right now, though, I do think there is some interesting stuff going on in the markets, and I'm curious to see what your takes are. We talked about the dominance chart, so I'm very, very excited to look at that one. But yeah, other than that, shout out to the rest of the team that has been working tirelessly behind the scenes here, keeping an eye on everything that no singular human being can do alone. So it's a team effort. We appreciate everybody. Yes, sir. So speaking of the team effort, we do have one person that's already joined us in the comment section. That is our favorite, Moonpilled Rational Optic. He says, "What's up, gentlemen? Skeleton crew tonight." Well, that's right. Me and Jay are flying tag team. Got me and the wingman here, and other than that, everyone else is hanging out with family, doing that whole thing, and then a few of us are under the weather. But to those folks, we hope that they get better very, very soon and feel fantastic come the next time that we appear on stream, and we might even be coming at you with a special guest.
Do me a quick favor, brother. I just realized that StreamYard opened up my YouTube link on the wrong browser, and I don't have anything saved on Chrome, so I'm gonna take a quick exit, and then I'm gonna open this up on Brave, so you could add me back on really quickly. I'd really appreciate it, bro.
You got it. There we go. Skeleton Crew tonight, in case you didn't figure it out. I am producing as well. That's right. Literally just the two of us. So
yes,
take care of what you need to.
The two of us. We can hack it if we try, Z.
Oh, we're hacking it, brother. I'm not gonna call us professional hacks, but like,
all right, I'll be right back.
True. All right. Also joining us tonight, we got Marcus72 saying, "What's up, y'all? Good to see you, my man. Thanks for joining us." By the way, if you guys have any fun Thanksgiving stories or things that you did, put them down below. Happy to shout you guys out. I know personally, I made the pitch this year that we should do a non-traditional Thanksgiving and do surf and turf with steak and lobster, but I was quickly vetoed. I even tried to give another classic recommendation of a beef Wellington, but then again, people were like, "Nah, we like turkey." And I looked at them and I asked, "Why do you like the inferior meat?" I understand it's the thing to do, but there's better meat. All right, Jay's back. Can we get a sound check, my man?
Alrighty, I have returned. Am I in?
You're
Okay,
in,
coach.
Can you hear me?
Hey, really ballsy trying to suggest the beef Wellington. Personally, I would have also liked to have beef Wellington. So it was for us. It was kind of a potluck, right? It was a potluck, and somebody brought in brisket, which is like beef is always my preferred meat.
Dude, I get behind that all day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I absolutely hate turkey. I don't really like holiday ham. Turkey, no matter who has cooked it in my entire life, it's always come out dry. It is very bland. The wife, though, she made a believer out of me because she brined that sucker. And let's just say it's probably the best turkey that I've ever had ever. But out of all the things that people brought and that she cooked, I was like, this is still my least favorite. I just don't like turkey. So I would have definitely approved your choice of beef Wellington.
Hey, I'm there for it. But I think you hit it right on the head there, which is, in my personal opinion, I think turkey, when it's done very well, it's good, but it's not amazing. But at the same time, unfortunately, I think it's hard to cook. And when you do mess it up, it goes south very quickly.
Yes, indeed.
It's also the amount of prep time required to get like a frozen turkey properly de-thawed, make sure it's actually de-thawed all the way through, and then do all the stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot. True.
Yes.
Speaking of meals, we have an unfortunate meal that occurred over Thanksgiving. Marcus's dogs enjoyed 2 pillows while he was out of town. So, sorry to hear that, man. Hopefully, it did not include a trip to the vet to get your dogs de-stuffed, if you will, because I've never done that.
That's okay, man, because with all the gains you'll be making throughout this entire bull market, especially in 2025, you'll have more than enough spare change to get yourself some new plush, maybe velvet cover, Tempur-Pedic pillows for your neck to rest your head on and sleep soundly after you've taken all of the profits at the very tail end of 2025. So I think you'll be okay, my man. In fact, you'll probably get yourself a few more pillows for your dog to either sleep or chew on. So you'll be all right.
Exactly. It just like throws me back to the meme. It's like me walking into another 20-something's house. It's like, man, look at all those throw pillows. They must be doing really well for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All right. With that being said, let's get to it. Let's pull up the markets. What do you want to look at first? Just Bitcoin price, Bitcoin dominance. What are we starting with?
Let's go down the list. Let's go ahead and take a look at Bitcoin first, and then we can take a look at Bitcoin dominance. There are a few things. So here's the thing, Z. I have been trying my best to dial back the complexity of the analysis as much as I can, right? And I keep it pretty simple with my analysis as it stands, right? Like I keep my charts fairly clean. But I've recently found that there's a few more things that I can do to give people who are maybe starting out or just they just don't care to look at the stuff on the charts, a way for them to kind of absorb the material a little bit better. And so I'm gonna present some of those graphs after we do the main analysis for Bitcoin, and I think a lot of people are gonna get some significant value over it because it really gives them a TLDR of the broad picture, like in a very condensed way that doesn't leave any of the like juicy information out. So I'm going to go ahead and share that after we go over the Bitcoin chart. Let me just go ahead and pull up Big Daddy Bitcoin here super quickly. We were talking about dominance earlier. So I actually have my Bitcoin dominance chart here up. So let me switch over to Bitcoin. There we go. And let me share my screen. Here we go. Present, share. Can you see that one okay, buddy?
Got you.
All right, wonderful. So like always, we try and start out looking at the market over a 20,000-foot view up in the air, right? So that you guys have a good view of what has been going on in the market on a bigger scale, right? Because a lot of folks, they'll jump on quick crypto Twitter, or they'll do their own analysis, and they're stuck in like the 4-hour to 15-minute chart. And those things are good if you're a day trader, but they can cause you a lot of anxiety and stress because of how volatile the crypto market is in general. And so when you zoom out and you see it in a big picture perspective, then it actually removes a lot of the noise out of the way, right? So even though collectively 2024 for the majority of this time that we spent here has been fairly painful, what you can see is the chart is up and to the right? Bitcoin since its inception has been up and to the right and has never done anything but go up and to the right. And so shout out to Uncle Peter Schiff. I know he wishes death upon this particular asset. I just think, here's my theory about Peter Schiff, Z. I think Peter Schiff is like, he's that guy who secretly actually loves Bitcoin, but he can't let other people know that he actually is a bag holder because he has such a big ego investment into his personal thesis that he just can't let it go. He's like the guy who watches Human Centipede. He knows he shouldn't be watching Human Centipede, right? But he secretly gets turned on. He gets turned on by watching Human Centipede.
Okay.
But when he gets out of his house, right, like every single time somebody mentions it in polite conversation, he's like, you should not be watching such thing. But then when he goes home, he actually has his own copy of the DVD and he like masturbates to it every single night.
He's the man that bought the Dune popcorn bucket thing and then uses it for multiple purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's Uncle Peter Schiff. But that's neither here nor there. Now, we're just making fun of you, Uncle Peter. Like I've always said, when Peter finally capitulates and says, you know what, guys, I was wrong about Bitcoin. I'm actually gonna think about taking a small 1% position in it. We will welcome you back with open arms, Uncle Peter. All right. The only condition is please wash your hands and wash your mouth. And then you will be welcomed into the fold of the Degen. So, like I said, on the monthly chart, look how clean it looks for Bitcoin. One of the things that I really wanted to focus, right, is take a look at the monthly volume that we have for Bitcoin, right, that we closed on November. So previously, the highest monthly volume candle that we had was over here during the very beginning of the year. Right? This was March of 2023. And so the reason why I wanted to focus on the volume is that for the Elliott wave analysis, right, you expect the largest volume candle to come in during your wave 3. Now, is it a hard and fast rule that the biggest volume for an asset to come in, we expect it in the wave 3? No. Right? It doesn't have to come there. It could come during the wave 5. It could come during the wave 1. But traditionally, you would like to see it during the wave 3. But since in the very beginning, we had the largest volume candle all the way back here in March, we had one scenario, which it's still possible, right? That I've mentioned here several times during the stream, that we could potentially have a truncated right translated cycle for Bitcoin in terms of time, looking for a top somewhere around the tail end of Q1 to early Q2 of 2025. However, since we got this absolutely monstrous volume candle here on the monthly, right, which basically encompasses every single other monthly volume candle that we've had throughout this current bull market, then this is making me much more confident that we actually have a much more traditional 5-wave impulse to the upside for Bitcoin, which means the likelihood that we see those really high moonshot targets that people have been talking about, right? Anywhere between that $180,000 to that $240,000 price point for Bitcoin just became much more likely, right? So that's the first thing that I kind of wanted to focus here on the monthly. If you take a look at the Bollinger Bands for Bitcoin on the monthly chart actually also paint a really good picture, right? Yes, the daily candles have been very painful, but if you take a look, once we broke out above the 20-month moving average for Bitcoin, which was here in September of 2023, right? Q4, Santa Rally, we have basically spent the entire last year above that 20-month moving average, testing the upper part of the Bollinger Bands, opening that up. And even during those times when we had those very large capitulation moments, right? You see these large wicks here in July, and then right here in August, which was the most painful capitulation wick that we experienced during this entire year. It didn't even come close to testing that 20-month moving average, which sits currently at 53,571, right? When you see an asset testing the upper band of the Bollingers, right, and opening it up, it's actually a sign of extremely bullish momentum, right? Especially when you zoom out on a large time frame like the monthly. So on the monthly time frame, again, right, when you zoom out, you can see that we have been indeed in a bull market. So that's the first thing that I want to take a look at in terms of Bitcoin on the monthly chart. Now let's go and take a look at the weekly. Right? Very similar picture here, right? Once we broke out here on the weekly, on October of this year, we have now spent the last few months opening up the Bollinger Bands. Look how beautiful that looks, right? This is exactly what you like to see, especially at the tail end of a bull market, right? Now, we're going to go ahead and do some Elliott wave analysis. Just a little bit of a review. We're not going to spend too much time on it. All right, just to remind folks of what the potential price targets are for the remainder of this bull market, right? So this is the first scenario that I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? This would be the scenario that would have us at a very truncated bull market in terms of time. We have a 1, 2, 3, and 4 currently in, looking for the wave 5. Once again, your timelines for determination is sometime during the end of Q1 to early Q2 of 2025. Your price targets are as follows, right? A fib extension taken from the start to the end of your wave 3. Sorry, from the start of your wave 1 to the end of your wave 3 to the end of your wave 4 will give you a potential price target of anywhere between the 0.5 and the 0.786 fib, which places you at about $108.5 thousand Bitcoin, to a high end of the $170,000 Bitcoin, right? So anywhere between the 0.5 and the 0.786 fib. Now, this is the most unlikely scenario, the more unlikely scenario, and that since we just closed the month of November with the highest volume candle, then this next scenario is much more likely, which is your double 1-2 impulse, right? So you got a 1-2 on a macro scale in, and then this entire move up is your macro wave 3, right? We call it a double 1-2 because we are counting a 1 wave 1 and 2 on a smaller degree already completed, with a 3, 4, 5 yet to come in, which would complete this larger wave 3 move. And your price targets are as follows, right? You take a fib extension from the start to the end of your wave 1 to the end of your wave 2. You can see that we've already met the minimum targets, right? Which is over here at $50,000, right? We actually also met the next likely area of extension, this 1.618 at 76,952. But when you take a look at the structure of this current market as it's maturing, it's fairly obvious to tell that the wave 3 of your 3 is not currently in yet. So the next target for this wave 3 is all the way up here at that 2.618, which places you at $153,000 Bitcoin to end this wave 3. Wave 4 is probably going to come in, right, sometime during the summer, right? The seasonality of markets, once again, coming in, sell in May, go away, etc., etc. So you expect that pullback to come in during the summer months, right? Probably sometime between July to, once again, August, September of 2025, before you make the final lunge into October to November of next year for that wave 5, right? So just once again, high-end targets for your next move in Bitcoin is $153.8 thousand, right? So that's what we're looking for on the weekly. If you want to get more granular with it, I'm not going to go over the granular analysis on this stream, right? Because we have a lot of material to go over. The only other thing that I will go over as we switch over to the daily chart over here is your 60-day cycles, right? So we are currently on day number 18 of the 60-day cycle. Number 28 with a day 18 high of the 60-day cycle. For those of you in the Telegram chat, you would be aware of this because we've been speaking about it for quite some time, that this is the first time, I don't know since when, that Ethereum is actually leading Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin has a day 18 high, but Ethereum actually just closed the day yesterday with a new cycle high on day number 27 or number 28, I believe. Yep. So it had a new cycle high. We'll go over the Ethereum chart a little bit later, but it made a new cycle high yesterday before the candle closed. So Ethereum is actually leading Bitcoin. Now, can we get something like a choppiness to Bitcoin, right? Where it just ranges anywhere between this $90,000 to $100,000 area for the remainder of Q4? Yeah, absolutely. But what I would like for you guys to realize is, unlike other times in the market where Bitcoin has basically taken over and alts have just bled when Bitcoin is ranging sideways to down, because we are at that point in the bull market where Bitcoin dominance is starting to fall, ETH Bitcoin is starting to recover, then this is actually a scenario that you wouldn't mind seeing for Bitcoin to range sideways, because for 2 consecutive weeks now, Ethereum and the alts by proxy have started to rally over the weekend, even though Bitcoin has spent it ranging sideways, right? We had a very similar scenario last weekend where Bitcoin was ranging sideways, and then Ethereum and the rest of the altcoin space started to really run hard, and they did it again over this weekend, right? We're going to go over the dominance chart a little bit later on. You can see that the dominance chart is showing extreme signs of weakness. So we'll start expecting to look for a cycle high anywhere between the 3rd week of December, around day 45 to about day 55, which places us just after Christmas on Sunday the 29th, right? Look for a cycle low sometime in the 1st week of January, which places you at Friday the 3rd, right? So that will complete your current 60-day cycle, right? Whether we range sideways or we go up, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it seems like the altcoins finally start to want to run hard against Bitcoin, right? A few key dates to keep in mind, right? We have, right? So this could actually determine what happens for the remaining of Q4, right? We have a CPI print coming in on the 11th, right? So 2nd week of December. And then we have the last FOMC meeting of the year coming in the week after, right? Tuesday, the 17th. If we get very favorable numbers, if we get a very dovish Jerome Powell during the FOMC meeting, then that could certainly send the price up. I think I mentioned that my minimum target or like my maximum targets for the end of Q4 for Bitcoin was about $115,000 Bitcoin. If we get a really dovish Jerome Powell and a really good print on the CPI for December, then I can guarantee you that $115,000 Bitcoin is well within the cards. All right, so just a few key dates to keep in mind for the gang. Lastly, here's what I want to show for Bitcoin, right? We have once again now broken into, right, during this move in November after the elections, right? We broke back into that bull market channel, right, that we lost during this very painful capitulation moment in August earlier of this year. You can see that we are once again trading within that channel, and we are about to try and attempt to test the midpoint once again, which is probably going to bring us to that $115,000 target. I would be willing to bet that sometime in 2025 is when you actually get the next retest of the upper band of this channel, which, if it happens sometime in January, is going to put you at around $150,000 Bitcoin at the earliest, right? If we chop and use the middle of this channel as support, you're probably going to get the retest of the upper band here sometime in March to April of 2025 before we make a lunge and try to hit that $150,000 area, right? So really, everything is like, it's all green lights for Bitcoin. Obviously, you always want to keep your ear and your fingers close on the pulse of the market, because even though we're super bullish right now, something could, like, shit could hit the fan and we can go completely sideways, and then everything just completely collapses and we're in a extended bear market, and we actually have a left translated cycle for Bitcoin, right? But obviously, that, as of this moment, it is very low probability that that happens. I know Uncle Peter Schiff wishes it wasn't so, but sorry, my guy. Bitcoin is going to $100,000 by the end of this year. So that is what I have in terms of my analysis for Bitcoin. Z, if you would like to add anything, please do so now.
Sure thing. I am going to. You brought up an interesting point earlier, which was how Bitcoin's comparing to Ethereum. And I think there's an interesting comparison there, and to show that Ethereum is acting slightly different than the rest of the market right now. As far as Bitcoin goes, though, I'm right there with you. We have our 60-day cycle ending on the 3rd of January as it stands right now. One of the things that two things I'm looking at right now are our moving averages. We are we're a decent bit above the 20-day moving average, but it looks like we did come back and almost retest it right here on the 26th and 27th. We are still well above the 50-day moving average, and it looks like we might be approaching the point where the moving averages are going to start to converge again, because up until this point they've been diverging, and now we're going to start to get some convergence. So is it out of the realm of possibility that we break a little bit below the 20-day and maybe even do something crazy like go down and retest the 50-day? I would not be surprised. It's definitely the possibility, and I say that because I'm also looking at the relative strength indicators down here below.
Yes.
Which is that we spent a good chunk of time in the overbought territory, and now we've dropped back down. And if the RSI holds as it did from the RSI high on the 29th of November, aka Friday, then what that means is that we're starting to see lower highs on the relative strength index. Yes. And again, that would also be confirmed if we broke down below this 61 low that we had 2 days before that. Again, this is the daily chart. It's getting that shorter time frame. This is the shortest time frame that I think we can reasonably use and still be credible when it comes to longer term investing, especially 60-day cycle stuff. So that's what I'm looking at here. At the same time, though, I mean, it's not crazy to think that we could still go higher for the cycle. Breaking a little bit higher, having a post day 30 cycle high makes sense. It might not be anything crazy. It could just be a little blip up and then kind of coasting a little bit to the right. But I think, like you mentioned before as well, 2 major data points for Bitcoin are going to be the CPI numbers and then also the FOMC meeting. And additionally, we have a few of the preliminary Black Friday shopping numbers that we want to touch later on today. But as it stands right now, I could definitely see Bitcoin doing the whole settling into a trading range kind of ideal. And it might be a little too seeing through the numbers, but I'm starting to see maybe a little bit of a new support form right around that like 91.5 level. And then theoretically you could have a higher support around like the $100,000 level as well. So it's possible, but at the same time, it seems that we're coming to a point where it could go either way, honestly, or it could chop sideways, which I'm saying I absolutely know nothing on this one. And I'm just trying to make my best guess.
Yeah.
I think go for it.
When we made a granular analysis during the Telegram calls, I made it a point to tell the group that we did hit the 886 fib on the last move up, and the 886 fib being hit during this move up just made it basically much more likely that we are going to take the high sooner rather than later, right? Whether we chop sideways, whether we get another lunge down, right? You said that we were forming another level of support, right? You have the 20-day moving average there. When we hit 90.8 square in the face, I was like, guys, what we were just talking about, because we were making we were like going on lower time frames, making an Elliott wave analysis. I was like, look, this next move, right? It's a potential wave 4. The 236 is sitting on 90.8 and then bounced right on 90.8, and now it seems like we're starting to see a strong level of support form around that $90,000 area for Bitcoin, right? And since you already have your charts up here, Z, you could take look at the 20-day moving average, man. Like the fact that Bitcoin is staying above those very sensitive moving average, right? And riding it, right? And not even like coiling around it, but a fair ways above that 20-day moving average tells you, right? Tells you that price is still wanting to ride momentum to the upside strongly, right? Because until you lose those very sensitive moving averages, right? Your 10-day, your 20-day, right? Your 12 EMA, et cetera, then you could be pretty confident that price still wants to go to the upside, right? So can we range sideways for the remainder of the quarter? Absolutely. But at a certain point, right, in the future, we are going to take the high of 99.8K, right? Once you hit that 886, it is almost a certainty, right? There are very, very rare times when that 886 is hit and price doesn't move in that direction, right? Whether it's to the downside or to the upside. So, like, looking very strong there. I think you point out the bearish divergence forming on the RSI, right? We have a higher high in price, but a lower high on the RSI. I think we can make another lunge towards that $110,000, $115,000 Bitcoin, right? We can either do one of two things. That bearish divergence is going to get stronger, or it's going to knock it out, right? And so far, every single time we've wanted to form bearish divergence on the RSI, right, for price, it has knocked it out. So it could do it again this time around. We'll wait and see during the next high.
Most definitely. One of the theories that I operate on is kind of like the trading range and then breakout theory. One of the things that you typically see during that kind of breakout move is you see a first higher high, a new higher low, a second higher high, a new higher low above the last one. And then if you are in price discovery or you get to that blow off top, that's where price really keeps going. So the way I'm looking at it right here is this is where we retested the old all-time high. We got rejected, but then we wanted to go back for the retest, and that's when we blew through. This area right here between the 11th of November and the 18th of November, it's questionable whether or not you want to call that the first higher low, because when you kind of squint at it, it really just looks like it's a continued uptrend at that point, just with a lot of noise going on. And then we very clearly have a higher low right here on the 26th, though.
Yes, we do.
So the question that I ask about this theory is this the first or second higher low? I could see an argument for it being the second higher low after having your first higher low here on the 12th of November, after just having straight green candles, but then it quickly gets knocked out and then it continues to trend. So
for me, Z, it would be considered a higher low, but you have to really get granular. Right. Yeah. And it's more important that we take a look at these things on a bigger time scale, right? But on a granular time scale, yeah, you could call it a higher low. But really what's more important is, even though we're kind of focusing on a small bit of the chart, you can take a look that since October, we've had a shift in momentum and shift in structure where we're consecutively making new higher highs and new higher lows, right? Like me and Z are focusing on the tail end of the chart because we're doing the 60-day cycles. But since October, right, since we had the trend reversal, right, you could clearly see that we have higher highs and higher lows, right? And that's what you want to pay attention, right? That's what you want to pay attention to when you're trying to take a look at, okay, I need some confirmation that we are reversing trend, and the fact that we have at the very earlier in the chart, right? Where we're making consecutive higher highs and higher lows. They're like, obviously we're just taking at the highs and the lows, but you could combine this with like the momentum, right? You could combine this with 60-day cycle analysis, but just using that singular indicator, right? The highs and the lows, you can tell that we have 2 consecutive higher highs, 2 consecutive higher lows, and that the trend has obviously moved strongly to the upside because we just punched through the $73.5 thousand prior high and made our way all the way up, basically cracking $100,000 Bitcoin, right?
Sure. Let's go ahead and I want to switch over to Ethereum real quick. Or tell you what, Ethereum will be the third stop because I think there's a second stop will help highlight the Ethereum point. So our current pattern looks like we have new all-time high, bit of a breakdown, and then we're kind of creating a trading range. If we go over to Solana, which has been acting like our number 3 coin this cycle, we see a similar structure where I believe Solana actually did hit, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not all-time highs.
Solana did hit all-time highs.
Did hit all-time highs. There we go. Now we have a little bit of a retracement in the same fashion. The only one that's different than this basic shape is actually Ethereum, which, as you mentioned earlier, made a new cycle high on day 27 here, or sorry, day 28, and we're on day 29 right now. Notably, though, Ethereum is not at all-time highs. Yes. This is something that we've talked about in this space before. We're not the only ones either, which is that I think Brendan was even the one that called it. He said that he thinks Solana is going to be the second coin to make new all-time highs, and then Ethereum is going to follow it. It's the old third cycle curse, if you will. And as it stands right now, this would support just as much. And the one that one of the indicators that I point to on this chart in particular, not just the moving averages, although we are about to see our 50-day moving average cross above our 200-day moving average. We already had the 20 cross. So now we're getting the rest of the indicators in alignment and in that proper fanning shape. But the thing for me is the RSI, which is that we did have a little bit of a breakout here on the 11th of November. Since then, it's been below, but it's gradually moving up and up and up, which is all in agreement with price action. So we had a test of the 70 level, but AKA before we go over into the overbought territory, and we just retested it again, and it looks like I think we just crossed over it. So in my mind, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for another peak or another run into the overbought area where we could actually see Ethereum make a move to at least go test some of these highs, if not break them, and make some new ones.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to go over to Ethereum analysis here shortly, gang. There is one more thing that I wanted to share for Bitcoin. Give me one second here, Z. I'm going to pull it up. Let me know if you see that right here.
Got you.
So here is what I want. So here's what I meant a bit earlier when I said that I'm going to add some analysis for folks that's very, very easy to digest. All right, me and Niles were going back and forth. We were just having some fun because we were knocking on the fact that people have a tendency to say, this time it's going to be different. This time it's going to be different. This time it's going to be different. And then we were taking a look at the stuff that Bob Lucas was posting. I was taking a look at the stuff that Ben Cohen was posting. I'm like, yeah, you're going to get certain points in time during the market where some things are going to be different, but collectively, once you zoom all the way the hell out, it's not that different, right? When I said earlier that Bitcoin has been up and to the right for forever, take a look at the average quarterly returns for Bitcoin, right? And this should tell you a lot, right? The average quarterly return for Bitcoin since inception, right? This bar graph goes all the way since inception, 2010, right? And every single quarter on average has been green for Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter when you bought Bitcoin. It doesn't matter at what price point you bought Bitcoin. If you held, you are inevitably going to be in green at some point in the future, right? Now, are there certain points in time when things are going to be different? Yeah, absolutely, right? But even during Q3, which on average has produced the least amount of returns for Bitcoin, right? 4%, right? On average, with about a standard, like a plus minus 38.7, right? So basically, out of every single quarter, it's produced you the least amount of gains. You're still in the green. All right. So when we say don't assume that a trend or a pattern breaks until it does, this is what we mean, right? Now, if you take a look at some of the, let's take a look at some of the halving years, right? 2012, a halving year. What do we know? a lot of people during 2024, they were like, guys, you know what? Q1 is probably going to be red. We're probably not going to get an all-time high until the halving occurs. And you could take a look, right? At 2012, Q1, we had a red Q1, right? 2016, which was another halving year, another red, right? 2020, your third halving year, another red quarter, right? And so that's when like people are like, all right, if I were going to take a bet, right? If I were to go on Polymarket and take a bet, I would bet that Q1 of 2024, which is our halving year, was also going to be red. And like you probably wouldn't have been wrong, except this time it was different, right? Q1 of this year returned us a very nice 68.8% on Bitcoin, right? And this is not the only time that when you make an analysis of the quarterly returns of Bitcoin that you're going to be able to pinpoint some point in time where it was different. But collectively, right, when you zoom the hell out, you're still going to be on average in the green if you just hold and don't trade yourself out of position and into oblivion, right? And so I really loved taking a look at this chart because it gives you such a clear picture, right? Like, yes, are there going to be certain points in time when it's going to be different? Absolutely. But on average, right, take a look at the post-halving year, right? Right. Post-halving year, 2013. All green. Post-halving year, 2017. All green. All green. Post-halving year, 2021. Oh, this time it's different. Q2, we saw a little bit of red there, right? After that $64,000 high, I believe it was. But the rest of the year, all green, right? So yes, are there going to be some periods in time when, you know what? It was different. But on a grander scale, you buy Bitcoin, you hold Bitcoin, you're going to be in profit.
To even maybe help make your point a little bit better, for our anomaly, quote unquote, here, for that Q2 of 2021? Yeah, it was down 40%, but the quarter before that was up 102.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think you're still up pretty large at that point, even more than 50% if you average those two out together. So,
and here's the thing, Z, it's like you're looking at a singular quarter. If you bought during the bear market, it doesn't matter if Q2 of 2021 was red. If you bought at the bottom of the bear market, you're in the green regardless, right? Which is why we encourage people to zoom out, man. Get yourself out of the 15-minute time charts, right? Unless you're a day trader, you should not be spending any time in there, and zoom out, right? You buy Bitcoin, you hold Bitcoin, you ride it into the sunset, and you make a ton of gains. So, yeah.
True.
All right, you want to head into Ethereum?
Yeah, I mean, I already said my piece. If you got anything else to add, please do. But yeah, Ethereum, I think it's primed to have a good month or two here.
Yes, absolutely. So let me go ahead and switch over to my Ethereum chart. Here we go. I don't know if you have to switch over to this new one, Z. I'm gonna try. Okay, I'm gonna click share this tab instead. I'm not sure if that. Okay,
you are live.
Wonderful. Okay, so here we are on the weekly Ethereum chart. Very similar. So I'm not going to go over all of the timelines that we did for Bitcoin, right? I just want to start with the weekly chart again to give you guys a macro perspective of what the Ethereum chart is looking like, right? Now, even though Ethereum has had a little bit of a, let's just say, a much more difficult time during this 2024 year, and basically throughout the whole bull market, you can see that Ethereum, just like Bitcoin, has still pretty much been up and to the right, although we are lagging a little bit when it comes to cracking that all-time high, right? But what I would like to point out is that Ethereum, for the most part, has broken out of every single downtrending resistance that it has been under since March of this year, right? Broke out of this strongly during the first week of November, right? And then just recently, we closed our first week above this is basically the strictest trend line that you could draw for Ethereum. And we finally closed above that, right? On the weekly, which is, of course, extremely bullish, because if you notice here, right, that there's not really much left in terms of resistance for Ethereum until it goes and breaks past the high here, which was at about 4,100, all close to 4,100, $4,095, before it takes that level, right? And finally makes a lunge and attempts to take that the all-time highs. What was the all-time high for Ethereum? Z was like 4,800, right?
I want to say it was just a hair under 45.
Yeah, 4,500, right? So we're not that far off, like 10% away, basically, from making new all-time highs for Ethereum, right? When it comes to the Elliott
sorry,
wave
you were correct. About 48, 48.60. Yeah, sorry, you got it.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, sir. Right. The only thing that I would that actually brought me a little bit of concern for Ethereum is this, right? What you have here is an expanding diagonal pattern. Now, when you talk to any Elliott wave analysts, right? Diagonals are they do happen, but diagonals are rare and they're never preferred unless you eliminate all other possibilities, right? Especially when it comes to expanding diagonals like we have here, right? Expanding because you can see the bounds of the impulse are expanding, right? That's why we call it an expanding diagonal. This is never preferred and not your main choice unless all the other scenarios have been eliminated. And because we made such that large monthly close for Bitcoin, right, for November, which makes it much more likely that we're going to have a traditional 4-year cycle, right, with the top occurring sometime in October or November. This now also actually, it looks like the same thing is happening here for Ethereum, which is you have something that is a double 1-2 pattern. But let's go over both of the current scenarios that I'm working with, right? So for the first scenario, right, the expanding diagonal scenario, you have a 1, 2, 3, and 4 already in, right? Now, for those of you who are stickler for Elliott wave rules, you know that yes, although wave 4 cannot enter the price territory of wave 1, this is an exception for diagonals, right? Diagonals, your wave 4 can enter the price territory. In fact, it does enter the price territory of your wave 1s, right? So this is okay. Now, if we do play out this diagonal pattern, then the price targets for Ethereum are as follows, right? You take a Fib extension from the start of your wave 1 to the end of your wave 3 to the end of your wave 4, and your common extension for the wave 5 is anywhere between the 0.5 and the 0.786 Fibs, right? Which would put us at a very weak, right, $4,200 Ethereum for this bull market. Again, very unlikely that we don't make new all-time highs to call it $6,200 Ethereum, right? Which would be a very pitiful performance for Ethereum for this entire bull market, right? So again, right, in terms of price, in terms of trend, right, in terms of the structure that we are observing here for Ethereum, it makes it much, much less probable that this is the actual structure, right, that we are working with, right? The expanding diagonal structure, right? So what's the more likely scenario that we're working with? All right, your regular impulse. And it just so happens that this is also looking like a double 1-2, right? You have a 1-2 already in, and then on a smaller time frame, right, you have another 1-2 in here, right? And this fulfills the general structure that we like to see on double 1-2s, right? Your next wave 1 is of a greater magnitude than your first one. Your second wave 2 doesn't go back into the pivot point of your first wave 2, so we're okay there, right? So in terms of price targets, what can we expect for Ethereum for the remainder, right? For the remainder of Q4. Right. If you take a Fib extension from the start to the end of your wave 1 to the end of your wave 2, your common extension here is the 1.618, which puts you at about $4,600 Ethereum, right? Just a little bit below the all-time highs. But if Ethereum gets really parabolic, if Bitcoin dominance keeps going down and falling off of a cliff, and that Ethereum Bitcoin takes key levels, then you can expect that the next level to hit for Ethereum, right? It's a bit of a moonshot here. The next common extension is this 2.618 at about $9,200 Ethereum, right? If this were to happen, I would expect this to happen probably sometime at the very tail end of Q1, early Q2 of 2025, kind of very similar to the timelines that we have for Bitcoin, right? So close to $10,000 Ethereum by Q2 of next year, right? Those are your price targets. And this scenario here, boys and girls, is the more likely scenario that I'm taking a look at just because of how Bitcoin structure has played out, especially getting that nasty volume candle on the month of November, right? And so that's what we got for Ethereum. Let me turn this off. All right, the timelines for Ethereum. Where are my cycle analysis? Here we go. In terms of time, right? Z already went over this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, right? Again, same thing, right? Ethereum is basically front running Bitcoin in terms of the 60-day cycles, right? So we got a day 28 high here, which makes it much more likely that Ethereum wants to have a right translated cycle, right? Could this be the point in time where Ethereum is actually going to have a much more bullish 60-day cycle than Bitcoin? Abso-freaking-lutely. And then we'll go over some of the reasons why a little bit later on in the stream. But here's the first thing. Here's a little bit of a teaser. All right, let me go ahead and switch over to my Bitcoin dominance chart. Dominance. Bitcoin, where's dominance? I'm not going to put the dot. There we go. Bitcoin dominance.
Ooh, oh, that looks good.
Doesn't that look good? Let me switch over here to the weekly chart.
Yeah.
Do you see this trend line right here? This should be familiar to you, all right? To all of you, because we've taken this trend line has not moved. All right. Bitcoin has been above this trend line since March of 2023. Basically for the entire bull market. And every single time people were like, altcoin season, altcoin season, altcoin season. It's used that trend line as support, bounced, and made higher highs, right? Higher highs and higher lows. And look what we have here. This is the first week since March of 2023, right? That was the last week we closed below this trend line, right? And right now, this upcoming week, right, or this last week for Bitcoin dominance, the first time it's closed below that trend line since March of 2023. This is why you see the altcoins rallying. Z, did you want to add anything to dominance before we go over a few of the other stuff? But I mean, it's such a clean and simple, shout out to Utada Hikaru, clean and simple. It's such a clean and simple chart to take a look at. It's like so obvious, right? Why the altcoins are starting to rally. If we get another close below this trend line for Bitcoin dominance, watch out, gang. Alts are gonna skyrocket.
For sure. The two things. First is a comment, then I got a question for you. The comment that I have is, again, we're a broken record here. I'm going to assume the trend line holds until I have confirmation that it's broken. We have appeared to break below it. This upcoming week is the critical inflection point. If we keep this candle below that, oh yeah, alts are going up, baby. But outside of that, I for the probably someone out there asking, why did you draw the trend line this way? Why is this the correct interpretation as opposed to putting the low point back in September of 2022?
It's just the most obvious. So when you draw descending and ascending resistance, right? Those things are very subjective, right? Because you could basically pick and choose if you want to use the candle bodies, if you want to use the candle wicks when you draw that trend line, right? But for the most part, most analysts are going to have somewhat similar looking trend lines. I guarantee you right now, you take a look at anybody who's analyzing Bitcoin dominance, their trend line is going to look it's going to look very similar, right? And on a large time frame, Z, it's like the most obvious, right? If you take a look at the weekly, if you take a look at the monthly, it's the most obvious trend line that you could draw in this chart, right? It's like anybody who's starting out doing technical analysis could pick this out and be like, okay, that's an obvious trend, right? Higher highs, higher lows, using that trend line as support. It's like, it's so obvious. So
that's fair. I think another way of arriving at the same conclusion, I think, is similar to what I was talking about with breakout theory from the boxes, which is that if you look back in starting in May, June-ish of 2021 on your chart, you get these consecutive peaks that start to really form around, what is that, your 48% level? And kind of create the 48% level. And they kind of create this upper end of what you could call a trading range, but it's dominant, so it's slightly different aspect to it. But at the same time, if it works, it should work. So theoretically, you have your upper limit there, and then in early, or probably like March, April of 2023, we start to see it test that upper limit, and then it gets rejected once, and then it starts to break out, and that's when it keeps it goes on its breakout run. And now that big old red candle that we just saw print, that appears to be the break in the new trend, which was the breakout. So now we can see it go in the other direction as well.
Yep. Yeah. So right now, as it stands, this has turned into resistance, right? What was one support, you have flipped into resistance. And now this 48 up mark that Z was talking about is now your next area of major horizontal support for Bitcoin dominance on the weekly. Now, if you guys have been following the analysis that we've been doing, the conversations in the chat, you know that me and Twinkie in particular have kind of settled anywhere around the 45 to 40% dominance for Bitcoin, right? Again, if we were to follow the trend, right? If we were to follow the trends in past 4-year cycles, Bitcoin would probably settle around that 40 to 45% dominance if this major horizontal support is lost. And we were like, Twinkie was on the high end, I was on the lower end, and I was like, Twinkie, let's just split the fucking difference and call it 42.5, 43% dominance and call it a day. Right?
Fair enough.
Right. But it seems like at the very minimum, a lot of other analysts who pay attention to the Bitcoin dominance are coming to the same conclusions, right? At the high end, you're probably going to find support at that very strong horizontal level of 48% dominance. At the low end, 40. You could call it somewhere in the middle, right? Like me and Twinkie did. But anywhere between 40 to 48% dominance is what you'd expect for Bitcoin, for dominance to fall to during the post-halving year.
True. All right. What do we want to move on to from here? We've got a good bit of chats building up, and we even have a request and a good question that I want to get to at some point.
Z, go ahead and let's go do chat shout outs. And then I just want to finish to show people Ethereum, Bitcoin, to get people a little bit more hyped for alt season.
Sounds good. We will go ahead and get ourselves back in order. All right. I saw you people sneaking in. I didn't miss you. First up, we have Brendan, one of our very own, saying incentive token, baby. That is right. And that is actually a reference to something later on where we have a request from the Bull. He's saying, can you do the incentive chart too? King Julian from Madagascar. I don't know. That's what my brain saw when I saw that. So definitely want to hit that because Pulse Chain is, I think it's pumping right now at the moment. And we haven't even gotten official news on the resolution of the SEC stuff going on. I got that. Up next, K Hudson snuck in here. He says, let's go. Giddy up, boys.
What up, K?
That's right. Next up, we got Moonmutt. Says, good to be here with my favorite Degens. Hope all of you had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving too, my man. Up next, we got Nate the Great. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and ladies. Don't forget the D gentlemen too. They're out there. They're out there.
Correct, sir. Good to see you, Nate. It was great to see you on the Whiskey Wednesday special that we had last week. Always good to see you, sir. Glad you could make it.
Definitely. Speaking of D gentlemen, we have one of our favorites right here. Centurion 54X says, "What's up, D-Gens? Good to see you, 54 Cent. Hope you're doing well, man. Hope the alfalfa's not catching on fire for you." That was a real thing. Also, by the way, if anybody out there had a relative ask them about crypto over Thanksgiving, I want you to put your story or a quick snippet down in the comments below. And similar to that, we also had Moonpill Rational Optics. He says his mom brought up the fact that Bitcoin almost hit 100K.
Yeah, I onboarded my parents, Z, to crypto at the bottom of the bear market. I was like, guys, look, do you want for sure gains? But less gains, or do you want something that's a little bit lower on the risk curve, but it's probably going to make you a lot more returns within the next 2 years? And they're like, you know what? We'll take the latter. So we onboarded them onto Ethereum, and they're not paying attention to anything else, but they're paying a lot more closely to the news now. And every single time Bitcoin makes a new all-time high or Ethereum makes a new high, my mom and my dad are texting me like, son, what's our investment in? And I'm like, I like being able to tell them that news, right? Because it gets them excited. Right. And I don't care about onboarding my parents to anything past Bitcoin and Ethereum. Right. Because that's all they need. Right. It gets them excited about investing because aside from their business. Right. And, the money that they've been putting in their like 401ks and their IRAs for retirement, they haven't really invested in anything else. Dude, my mom, here's a story for you folks. Right. My mom bought Bitcoin last cycle. So she could have been a whole coiner, bro. She could have been, what my mom was doing last cycle? My mom was buying a little bit of Bitcoin with like the money that she was making from the business, because that's when like Venmo started allowing you to buy crypto, and all the customers that she would service through Venmo, right? That money, instead of transferring it to her account, she would just buy Bitcoin, right? My mom
now we're talking.
Dude, my mom was a whole coiner, but bless her, right? She didn't know anything about crypto. The volatility scared her out of her bag. She sold at like a 6x and it went to 69,000. Profits are profits, but like she had some prior exposure, so it wasn't that difficult. And my mom's always been very savvy when it came to finances. Right. So it wasn't that difficult to onboard her onto crypto, but that was like a cool story that I figured I should tell you.
I like it. That's good. No, shoot. I mean, gosh, I had a handful of people asking me about it. There's some people who are like, you do crypto thing, don't you? And I was like, yes, I do. What do you got for me? And then I had a plethora of questions. The first one was my brother even asked me, he's like, how are you charting things when there's technically no new data in the range that we're in? Because like we're at all-time highs. And I was like, yes. So there's this thing called Fibonacci resistances and levels. And he's like, that sounds made up. And I said, I would normally agree with you, but it's actually been, there appears to be a good chunk of data, and whether it's psychological, market dominance patterns or whatever, it shows up more than you think. And it's Fibonacci is part of nature. So it's part of human nature too.
Yeah, if people only knew how much math undergirds everything in the world, like you'd have a better appreciation for it.
For sure.
Right. Without math, almost all of this shit would not be possible. So yes, Fibonacci, bro, it exists everywhere.
For sure. The most advanced question that I got this Thanksgiving, though, came from my own dad, who is not like a market guy at all, really. But he straight up asked me, he's like, yeah, so we went pretty high. Do you think people are starting to short the market now? And I was like, whoa. Okay, we're talking options on Bitcoin, too. Now we're getting into the weeds. I was like, well, we look at the ETF flow. We've actually been a little bit negative over the past few days. So I think 100K is a good psychological resistance. So, yeah, it makes sense to see that. As far as people getting like putting out major shorts, I'm not seeing that in the markets. People are doing some short-term ones, and people are getting wrecked both ways. I told them, like, look, if we had a pretty large day for liquidations, it usually was in like the $250,000 range. We've been averaging $500,000 for like the last month and a half. People are, and it goes both directions too. People are, the open interest for options contracts on Bitcoin right now has never been higher. And it's like double or triple than what it has like previously been at highs in the past. Yeah. So,
and I'm pretty sure the options volume broke new all-time highs before we broke all-time highs for Bitcoin.
I'm not surprised.
I'm pretty sure we went over to. We went over to. You know what's funny, Z? We went over the Binance liquidation heat maps during the earlier. Yeah.
I call them the salt maps.
Yeah, we went over the liquidation heat maps for Binance, and I was like, "Yo, you want to know how market makers play with people, right? When they do leverage, right?" And I showed it. I was like, "Please forgive the eye cancer because the heat maps can be eye cancer." And I was showing them. I was like, "Look, we hit this level, see this bar get liquidated, and then see the price lunge, like either to the up or the." So I was giving them like a live feed of what was happening on the Binance liquidation charts. It was pretty cool to see. But yeah, like people, that range, bro. Like that whole range from 99K to when we dropped to 90.8, all that shit, the majority of that, bro, it was the market makers liquidating the shorts on the downside, and then the market makers liquidating the longs on the upside when we tried to knock on the door of $100,000 Bitcoin. So
that's true. You know when we also had some massive liquidations as well? Right around this time, right around the time that you and I were arguing whether or not we were going to stick at 81.5 or go up. And guess what? Everyone else was having the same arguments too, except they actually put more money on it and then got wrecked. So I'm just saying. Yeah. For sure. All right, we got to get through the rest of these. By the way, shout out to Smooth Brain, a.k.a. Boomstick. He says he was loving the alpha. I know we went a little bit long on the TA today, but it's the two of us. I don't know what you expect. Yeah. I know, right? TA, and then I'm going to go ramble about legal and government for probably like 20 minutes after this as well. So stay prepared. But we are going to give the people what they want because we have the question from the bull. We're going to go look at incentive token and the rest of the Richard Hart ecosystem over on Pulse Chain. And we have another question I'm going to get to towards the end of the comments, and we will get to that. But other than that, another favorite around these parts, we have Tin Top saying, "What's up, Hexicans? Good to see you, my man." He says he actually has some interesting data for us. He says Tether dominance broke to the downside. Altcoin season is about to blow up.
Yep, that's a good proxy. So very good point by Tin Top. Remember, when Tether dominance is up, it usually means either a few things, right? Tether is printing like a motherfucker, or people are on the sidelines, right? Like dominance, stablecoin dominance tends to go up really, really, really high during bear markets because people are on the sidelines waiting for the bottom. That's when they inject a huge amount of capital. So when you see dominance of altcoins, and this of stable coins, geez, I almost lost the word, go down, right? It's a good sign because people are basically switching from stable coins from the sidelines and into actual assets. So that's a very good sign. Very good observation there, Tin Top. Thank you very much.
Well done, sir. We are here to observe another OG joining us. We have Crypto Sloth, aka Dr. Toothslayer himself. Good to see you, my man, with the classic yo yo yo. That is his tagline. Glad to see you, my man. Hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving as well.
He needs to change his handle, man. It should be Dr. Crypto Sloth now. Come on, man.
Dr. Crypto Sloth. Put some respect on that name.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of longtime friends, we also have Paul Sachs coming in saying 694.20% increase incoming for Bitcoin in Q1 of 2025. He's calling his shot, folks. He's calling it. If we have that, that's like a 6x, I think.
For Bitcoin. That's a big.
That's an 8x. That's about an 8x from here. So that would be well over $500,000 Bitcoin. So
it would put us at a greater gain, I think, than last cycle. I have to double check, but if we're gonna get a 700% increase from these prices, if you take the magnitude from the very bottom of the bear market to whatever that number is, that would place us at bigger gains than the 2018, 2022 cycle.
I think so.
I'm not sure that happens because we have tended to diminish the returns as time goes on. But
that's true.
This time could be different.
It could be, but at the same time, I don't know if he appreciates us beating up the joke because the old 69.420 would be nice. He does have an excellent other point though. He says XRP market cap flipped Solana yesterday, giving hope to Ethereum that old legacy protocols are going to get some more love in the next 12 months. That's right. If XRP can flip it, everyone else can too. Bro, if your favorite stable coin can break into the altcoin market, there's hope for everyone.
Dude, first and foremost, congratulations to the XRP army, right? You guys have held on. You deserve all the gains that you're going to get. But please, for the love of Satoshi, don't get too far into your heads. I hear people going like, we're going to see $100 XRP. $100 XRP, it doesn't even take a lot. It takes like a 4x on current market cap to flip Ethereum, right? And that would take you to a 2, 4, 6, 8. That's an $8 XRP, right? That's an $8 XRP to flip Ethereum. You think we're going to get $100 XRP this cycle? Like, please don't get honey dick by these fucking TikTok people. Jesus Christ. Like, that would flip Bitcoin's market cap. Well, I have to see the analysis because I just took a look at Ethereum. But $100 XRP?
Be wild. By the way, we have one of our another good friend of ours, Cassie, sliding in here saying, "Hey guys, good to see you as always." And let's finish it off with what I have as the question of the evening, I think, or it's at least a good question. So based on the XRP flipping the market cap, John Knox was saying, right, actual DeFi on Bitcoin, mind-blowing. I can already see companies choosing to build on Bitcoin instead of Ethereum. This is a dovetail to his original question, which was, what do you think about companies building on top of Bitcoin instead of Ethereum? Companies like Track Network, wild concept. So the sentiment from part 2 is that older stuff can get some love. I'll tackle this first. Can older stuff get some love? Yes. However, I personally believe that Bitcoin is not the network to be built upon. Bitcoin is, I think it's a finished product. I think there are ways you can incentivize people to the network through, what was the Bitcoin ordinals, I believe it was. That was like, that was even like 2 years ago, I want to say at this point. But stuff like that, it's possible. But at the same time, I just don't think that the blockchain network itself is actually built for that kind of thing. Does it add value to potential people interested? Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, I don't think Bitcoin, the network itself, doesn't even need more incentive behind it. It is first in, best dressed. It is the original. It has the most decentralization. The great mystery of who is Satoshi is, I think it will never be solved. I think people are going to continue to speculate that until the end of time. And I think that is those are some of the biggest selling points for Bitcoin. Does it need more? No, I don't think so. I think we're eventually going to get to the point where, I don't know if Bitcoin is actually going to become a medium of exchange just due to the fact of how slow the network is and it's baked in. But I do think the store of value story is very much going to stick. I'm always happy to see people building projects. I've said it once and I'll say it again many times, which is that building projects is hard. Building good projects is damn hard. So to anybody that builds a project, let alone a good one, hats off to you, brother. You've done some good work out there. Jay, what do you think? People going to build on Bitcoin instead of Ethereum?
I am of the very same opinion to you, Z. I think that Bitcoin is a finished product. I think, like, if you're trying to build on it, kudos to you. You're going to get a lot of resistance from people in the community. They think, like, they're purists, obviously, by virtue of them being maxis. I think you can accomplish a lot by building around Bitcoin and supporting Bitcoin. Like, look at what Charles has been doing for the past few months, right? Like, he's been very, very open now about reaching out to other people across the aisle, right? He's apologized to people in the XRP community. He's apologized to the people in the Solana community. Like, this has been a complete 180 shift for Charles, and I think that's helping. It's certainly reflecting on the price, right? But you could do the stuff like he's doing, right? You could build around to support Bitcoin, but I think like changing it or like building on it, right? I would say do that on Ethereum, right? Do that on an L1 that has been specifically created for you to build on, right? Bitcoin doesn't need it. Now, this might get some controversy, but I think Bitcoin is God's money. I think God, if you're religious, I think God was looking down on his creations and says, you guys have really fucked up the monetary system, right, for each other. And so I'm going to inject the idea of Bitcoin into Satoshi's head if it's a singular entity, and he's going to create my money. I think Bitcoin is God's money, and it should not be tampered with.
Well said. I like it. I mean, I think Ethereum is the first largest network, in my opinion, that is designed to be built upon. I personally think there are even better networks to build on. And I'm not even going to try to shill Pulse Chain here for you, even though I probably should, because it is technically better, faster throughput, smaller block time, and the gas fees are much less. But there's even a bunch of other stuff out there. Whether you make a layer 2 on Ethereum, whether you go to something like Phantom, which some people call the test platform for Ethereum's future upgrades, or you could do something like traditional finance and go build stuff over on AVAX for like the banking network or whatever. There's so many different networks out there that are at the point where they have enough robustness that they're not going to go down constantly. Cough, cough, Solana. But sorry, shots fired. I know, but I'm saying there's a lot of options out there. I just don't think Bitcoin is the best in any of those categories. I think if you want to be on the largest network that works well, I think that's Ethereum. If you want to be on a network that has faster throughput, I think that's going to be something more like Pulse Chain or Phantom. If you want to be on something that has very specified structure and coding, that's going to be something like AVAX. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at here.
Yep.
Like, Bitcoin doesn't need any more help. It's already killing it. It is leading the way. But at the same time, the other, I guess, a final point on this one is, I think that Bitcoiners themselves are even resistant to the idea of people building on Bitcoin. Because I remember back, there was a lot of pushback to the ordinals originally.
Ordinals,
talking about people like, oh, you're just raising gas prices for no good reason. It's
ordinals and runes, remember. Both ordinals and runes,
Yeah, and then when it comes to the sentiment, I think there's two camps. I think there are the true believers who are like, no, Bitcoin is the only one. Like, these are the Michael Saylors, but even more dogmatic about it. Like, no, Bitcoin's it. Don't touch anything else. Just Bitcoin. Don't even mess with my Bitcoin network. That kind of thing. And then there's the rest of us, which is just like cheering on Bitcoin because we know it's the flag bearer and it's leading the way. It's leading the charge for the rest of the industry.
The vanguard.
Exactly. Thanks to things like Hart's Law and liquidity bonding. That's why we cheer it, not dogmatically, but from an actual position of hope. So, yeah.
And to kind of round off this conversation, Z, I think as a businessman, right? As an entrepreneur, and I think other entrepreneurs can empathize me when I say this. When you're building out a product, right? Whether it's a service or a product, it's probably intelligent for you to build on a system that allows you to do the work effortlessly. Right. If you're building some
Path
if you're
of least resistance.
in the path of least resistance, right? If you want something that has fast throughput, right? Solana, probably, if you can live with the fact that it goes down every.
It's a good chain. I know I give people
Right.
crap, but
And,
it's a
and
good
hey,
chain.
to be fair, Solana's not the only blockchain that has gone down, right? It's just the meme, right? But other blockchains have gone down occasionally, right? It's not just Solana, right? But if you want something that would super fast throughput, maybe Solana, maybe Phantom, right? It's like you're taking the path of least resistance. Now, is there an argument that could be made that, look, nobody's building on Bitcoin because et cetera, so you could be a pioneer in that case? Yeah, obviously there's an argument to be made there, right? But again, it's like build something on a platform that is made to be built on, right? Something that was specifically created for you to build smart contracts on, which is Ethereum. All right. Like, don't make it any more difficult on yourselves than it has to be, right? You can pioneer in other ways. You don't have to pioneer on Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, again, it's a perfect product. It's good the way that it is.
That's true. I mean, not to hit them with too many isms here, but there's also, it's the riches in niches. So no need to try to force yourself into Bitcoin if there's a better way to build the exact product you need for the exact strengths, and don't worry about the things that you don't need to worry about. So
Yep. Yeah.
Very true. Well, to cap it off before we get into the incentive token and pulse chain analysis, we do have a very unfortunate message. And Nate the Great, why are you doing this to us? He said his boss asked him if he should buy Doge. Top signal?
I think Doge is going to do well because Doge, like Bitcoin, is the flag bearer for the rest of crypto. I think Doge is going to be the flag bearer for anything that has Elon Musk's face on it, especially since, Department of Government Efficiency. Doge is going to be plastered. If Doge, the meme, has not already created roots that go deep within the mind space of people, right? It's going to basically live rent-free in the heads of the entire world. So if you're going to pick, even though it's the OG meme coin, it's probably you would not do bad if you put your money on Doge. You wouldn't. Just saying.
I also had to answer this question over Thanksgiving. Someone was like, "Yeah, what about Dogecoin?" I was like, "Yeah, Doge is going to hit $1." They're like, "Why do you say that? You sound so confident." I was like, well, I'm pretty sure it hit 69. It, depending on who you ask, it hit either 69 or 72 cents last time around. So, considering that Elon Musk is only a more important figure now, and it's kind of his baby, kind of, yeah, I have no doubt that it's going to break all-time highs. And going from 70 cents to $1 is a no-brainer. So we're already at like 42, 43 right now. So it's really nothing that crazy.
Yeah, it's like if you want easy gains on memes, it's Doge. You want easy meme coin gains? Doge.
Look, I think that this might be a bit of an interesting take here, but I think that we might see the emergence of the differentiation between like joke tokens and meme tokens. So I think joke tokens are going to be stuff like your dog tokens. It's weird that there's an actual genre of like tokens with dogs as the mascot. So you have Doge, Bonk, Shib, and now the darling of this one is Whiff, Dog Whiff Hat. That's been the darling of the Solana meme tokens ever since back in March. But I do think that we might see the emergence of true memes, meme tokens. And that's where I see stuff like Pepe. I see stuff like Fwog, Toby, that kind of thing. Whenever you're making memes out of things that only like the terminally online people would recognize, I throw myself in that basket. I think that might have a little more different appeal than just like the joke tokens, because it's like the things that we refer to as meme tokens right now are going to be like the joke tokens for the normies, because they're not going to understand. They don't have to understand internet culture. They don't have to understand the crypto space. They don't have to understand this like hyper niche meme coin space as well. But they can just be like, oh, haha, it's the Elon Musk coin. Yeah, meme coin. It's actual true meme coin.
Yep.
But then if you want to get like real autistic with it, like like us, then yeah, you get in there and you'd be like, okay, so we have the frog tokens, we have like Pepe and Toby and Frog, then we might even have some different ones where it's like maybe like some like Trump related memes that are just like shitting
like
on
a political
politicians
meme
and whatnot.
coin category, right? You have this. So if for those of you who actually want to get as autistic about the meme coin space as we do, you can go check out Murad. Murad actually has a hierarchy of importance when it comes to the memes, right? And at the very top, he puts the movement, the cult meme tokens above it, right? So like things like Giga, right? It's a red pill, hypermasculinity type of movement. Look, if you take a look at the Giga chart, it's so poetic, bro. It's a Giga Chad meme and it's a Giga Chad chart. It's insane.
I wanted to bring that one up because I did want to give some flowers to a good friend of ours, and two friends of ours actually. That's Boogie and Twinkie. Those boys have been absolutely on top of this one.
Yep. Take a look at that chart, man. That is a beautiful chart.
Yep, this is the monthly on Giga. Giga closed its 11th consecutive green monthly candle and survived an 89% dump after a whale got wrecked. This is one of the craziest charts out there. The big one.
Yeah. A whale got absolutely fucking slaughtered, right? He did something stupid. I think he got exposed, like his keys got exposed or some shit like that. And he got rugged. And it dumped the fucking price 89%. And just like that, boom, bought back up. I was telling Twinkie when it happened. I was like, yo, Twinkie, did it happen? He was like, yeah. I was like, oh, let me take a position. He's like, it already got bought up, bro. Sorry. I was like, ah, shit.
Very true. Yeah. I gotta say though, Boogie and Twinkie, I think those guys do a lot more with like the meme coin space, or what we'll call the small market cap space, and I think they've done a lot better. And so if you want that kind of information, go check them out. I'm pretty sure they're streaming tonight. They do the tacos and kimchi. It's fantastic. And if you ever know nothing about cologne, Boogie will get you in there, or you can just keep torturing him and telling that you buy the Adidas cologne for men as your go-to, and he'll have an aneurysm. It's always fun. True. All right, enough of the meme coin talk.
Yes, sir.
All
still
right.
got a few stats, I think.
Oh my. Nate the Great, we'll cover that one. We have Paul Sachs coming in with the $9.42 billion in Bitcoin and $1.4 billion in option contracts canceled out Friday evening. Yes, large amounts of trading happening. Absolutely. And additionally, Ethereum options as well for your extra spicy flavor. Very true. And then let's get to the question from the bull. He says, do you think incentive token has topped for now, or think we might get a retest under $4? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Oop. We're on everyone's favorite gopulse.com. What do we have here? What lines am I drawing like a psychopath? Okay, so we have an old low here at 5.25 that I had. But yes, it does appear that we have broken out above our $3.15 range, and we are possibly going up to this area. Is it possible to get a back test? Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I mean, this looks like it's running right now. Increased volume, breaking through major resistance levels, well above the 50-day moving average. And yeah, I mean, I could see it run up maybe close to $5, or we could even have a small pullback and retest before it continues. But as it goes right now, the only thing in the way is this little wick right here, and this small resistance at about $4.50. That's what I'm looking at.
Let me go ahead and share my screen here, Z.
Please do.
Here you go. So this should be a little bit of a review for the folks in the Telegram, because I've gone over a deep dive of the Richard Hart assets last week. And if you folks remember, I said that incentive is the one that is lagging everything, right? Because both Hex, Pulse Chain, Pulse X, all three of those have had their breakouts, right? But until recently, if you take a look, incentive has basically been rejected at the same level that it's been rejected since here in June of this year, right? Rejected here, rejected here, rejected here. So it was severely lagging the other core 4 assets, right? The other core 4 assets had already made consecutive higher highs, right? But incentive had only made its first higher low, right? Only during this move did you see incentive finally break out. of this very strong horizontal resistance at about $3.25. And surprise, surprise, we made a lunge to the upper band of that channel, and we closed a day above it. So a very good sign. I think if you go to the weekly real quick, that was also a weekly close above that ascending resistance, a weekly close above strong horizontal resistance. So as it stands, it is all green lights for the core 4. Now,
Let's go.
The question from the bull is, are we potentially going to see a pullback? The answer is yes, you could definitely see a pullback, but what do we see on the volume? What do we say about volume? When you make higher highs, what do you like to see? You like to see a large injection of volume follow. And we had here on the high yesterday, the highest volume candle that we've had for incentive since back here, right? During the highs in March of this year. Right, so that's number one. Take a look at the RSI. Are we on the oversold area, which means we might get a pullback? Absolutely. You're probably going to get a pullback, but you're probably going to get a pullback to the very top of this oversold range, if not a bit lower, right? You see you have some support there, right, at around that 70 area. So yeah, the RSI is probably going to reset and take a break. But what do we say about bull markets? You don't want to trade too aggressively during bull markets because you will trade yourself out of position, especially during the Q4 of the halving to the post-halving year. So yes, are we oversold? But once again, strong volume, no bullish, no bearish divergence on the RSI. No bullish divergence, no bearish divergence, even though we're oversold. Take a look at your MACD. Take a look at your MACD. The MACD is also looking very healthy. Let me bring this up a little bit. There we go.
The MACD is so positive, we have to increase the size to see the top of it. How about that?
Right. Look at this, man. This is what you like to see on the MACD. After you had your bullish cross, right? You knocked out bearish divergence on the MACD, and now your 12 moving average is running away from your longer term moving average, which is this 26 right here, the 26 one. Okay. So strong momentum on your MACD, strong momentum on your RSI, strong volume coming in during the higher high. So incentive is in a very good spot, man. Incentive is in a very good spot because we have the last area of resistance right here between 7.5 cents and 8.5 cents. Once we knock out that last area of horizontal resistance, then you don't really have much left before we take the prior high of the year, which was right here at about $10. And we try to attempt and make a lunge to this very weak resistance here that we had during the initial release of Pulse Chain. Right? And also consider this. The incentive chart, along with Pulse X, are the healthier looking charts between the core 4. Because if you can see here, you held structure. This is important here. And this is why people are bullish on incentive. Because you held market structure. Hex did not. Pulse Chain did not. They made new bear market lows during a bull market. Okay? So their structure was reset. Pulse X and incentive held beautifully. And so, yes, are you going a little bit higher risk when you invest a large portion into incentive? Absolutely. But in terms of just the setup for Pulse X and incentive is a better setup than the setup for Pulse Chain and Hex. It's just what it is. Right? So yes, can you get a small pullback here, the bull? Absolutely. Should you be trading excessively during this pullback? Absolutely not, because you will trade yourself out of the position. But the TLDR is all green lights are go for the RH Core 4.
That's true. I think incentive token is an interesting one because it has different fundamentals than the rest of the Richard Hart tokens. What I mean by that is everything else had big sack phases and whatnot, and then Hex is also Hex and had the big old fork, and also has a very compelling use case, I shall say. Shout out to Matty Allen, who's literally hosting the Hex 5th birthday steakathon right now as we speak. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those three tokens all have their own interesting aspects because Pulse Chain had a sacrifice, Pulse X had a sacrifice, Hex was Big Fork, and it is the original project. Incentive token is kind of the only outlier because it had a 0 supply at release, and the only way you can get incentive token is through staking on Pulse X. So theoretically, it means it might have a negative aspect when it comes to the supply distribution, but the supply distribution is constantly increasing, or is constant. So every day, the supply increases linearly. It's very stable, it's very predictable, and it's the only way to acquire this token. So because of that, I think what we're seeing is a lot of true market price action and price psychology. So it kind of makes sense to me, which is why we see that very healthy chart, because it's as close as you get to a meme coin. It's people did not sacrifice for it, or sorry, people did not sacrifice for freedom of speech and then be roundabout rewarded for their cool political statements. This is the token that kind of has its own most natural fundamentals, shall we say.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree there. And so so the bull's asking here, right, about, I'm assuming because he wants to do some trading. Look, here's what I would say. If you want the targets, the price targets, it's all in Telegram, right? We went over the analysis. If you want the timelines, they're in the analysis. If you're looking to swing trade, you're probably looking to take profits sometime during the tail end of Bitcoin 60-day cycles, right? So anywhere between that 45 to 55 day, right? So you're looking at the third, anywhere between the third to last week of December, before we look for a cycle low, sometime in the beginning of January, in which case you would buy back in. That's if you wanted to swing trade. But if you are going to swing trade, boy, you better keep it at like a modest 5 to 10%, man. If you're playing with the whole bag and you're not an experienced trader, you guys already know what my opinion on these things are.
True.
Do
By the way,
not trade yourself out of position.
Correct. We've spent the last 2 years getting into position. Why would you want to get off the ride now? You're on the roller coaster. You've survived the chain ride up, and now you're about to have the fun part. So there you go. Hey, at the same time, though, this is not financial advice. We're not trying to give it, but I will say I think Jay has some very good. If that is what Jay is talking about, what he is doing, I think that is a very reasonable thing to do, because guess what? I'm doing the same thing as well. I think we talked about it earlier with the TA section. Try to keep things simple. Will we get a little technical and nerdy on the actual analysis? Yes, for sure. However, the strategies in play, I can tell you that myself, and I'm pretty sure everyone else on the team, we have pretty simple positions, and it's one of those ideas that the fewer trades you make, the fewer chances to wreck yourself you're going to give yourself, and you're going to be supported. And I know you can call it the boomer advice if you want, but there is a reason that some of the best performing stock portfolios are of dead people, because they can't trade, so they're forced to hold. It's held true for a long time, and I'm pretty sure it still holds true today. So that's what I'm saying. But by the way, a little nugget I'll add here on the Richard Hart ecosystem stuff. I personally think Coach X is the one that shared this with me, by the way. He did it on stream too, which is that Pulse Chain ecosystem closer tracks Ethereum than it does Bitcoin. Obviously, everything is tied together to a certain degree, but at the same time, I think he made a very compelling case and pointed it out with data on the charts to show that Pulse Chain really does track Ethereum closer to Bitcoin because it's an Ethereum fork. At the same time, though, Bitcoin can have its own independent stuff, and we've also seen Pulse Chain and every token on Pulse Chain have their own independent variables and factors as well. So it's not like it has to follow Ethereum or anything, but over the longer time horizon, it typically has.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you guys would know that the 60-day cycles for the Core 4 mirror Bitcoin and Ethereum, like basically to a T. So I always tell folks that Richard Hart is an adept technical analyst, right? He's not a fucking slouch. And so it's not a coincidence that Pulse Chain was released during the time that it was, because it timed the end and start of the next Bitcoin 60-day cycle to a T. And so far, it's been following it to a T. So it could be just a pure coincidence, or it can't. I would be willing to bet on the former, because Richard seems like the type of guy to use, if he's good at it, he's going to use it to his advantage.
I agree. I think Richard Hart knows crypto very, very well. And I think he also knows the markets a lot better than he leads people on to believe. I think he tries to portray that he's just a developer and a founder, but I think the man knows. I think he knows what he's doing with his markets. People are going to point to me and tell me I'm an idiot because, what is it? The RH Bags bought Ethereum at $3,900 or $3,600?
36, 37, I believe.
37? Well, technically he's in profit as of like today and yesterday. So at the same time, just zoom out. But to finish off our chats before we get to the final, what we thought was the main portion of the show, but it's actually hanging out with you guys. That's always the main portion. Yeah. He says, how about Pete Eyes? You gents have a small moon bag. Charts look primed to head to 4.5 to 5 cents. Yes, I do have a small moon bag. And by that, I mean a scratcher bet of like, I think I made like a 2 million pulse bet at the time, which was like back when Pete Eye, I think it hits like 6 cents the first time or something. So I don't know. You guys do the math. I'll put it this way. It is I think out of all of the fun meme coin narratives on Pulse Chain, this is the leader. I think the idea of the pegging, which I don't believe in, by the way, but the narrative, the concept, the sentiment, the group, the team huddle being like, yeah, let's make this thing happen. I think it's the strongest here. So that's why I think it's going to do the best out of the meme coins and all the P copies, if you will.
Yep. Meme coins feed on narrative. Right. So meme coins don't really have any technicals. Now, obviously this, right, the whole pegging thing, you have to look at the technicals if you want to heavily consider if that's actually a possibility and that it can just sustain a peg, right? That's a different story. But like Z said, this is the narrative. This is the campfire with most fuel to it. And so I think it's going to achieve some success. For the love of Satoshi, please de-risk at the minimum your positions. Don't get too crazy into it. But I think it's going to do well. Right. I don't hold the moon bag. The bull, you guys already know I'm a very conservative investor. The most crazy I get on meme coins, well, not even meme coins. The most crazy I get when it comes to like risk assets is investing in very low market cap projects. Right, like I have a few AI projects that I spoke about that we were talking about when it was like around $50 million in market cap, so it's still pretty small, and we've done pretty well with that. But like that's as risky as I get, right? Shout out to Mr. Niles Jenkins in the fucking chat. So we're gonna have Niles on the show very soon. He is basically the Murad of the Degen Roundtable. This guy has been an absolute chad when it comes to picking out meme coins. If I was going to put my trust on somebody, it would be this gentleman right here. So we're going to bring him on to speak about his meme coin thesis on the Degen Roundtable on a future guest episode so that you guys can make very focused, concerted, educated bets when it comes to memes. When like Niles he's like, I'm going to go on Deck Screener. What's doing well today? I'm going to pick 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to throw like a 5-figure scratcher on there. This guy has he has a process that he goes through when he's picking out the projects that he's going to invest in. And that is what we will bring to you when we bring him on the show, right? If I was going to trust somebody with a meme coin pick, it'll be this gentleman right here. So shout out to Niles.
True. Absolute stud right here. He's even dropping some bars for us. I think I'm the subject of this one, so I'm flattered, but at the same time, I'm just an idiot on the internet that talks about my investments. And they happen to be working out pretty well. So he says, Zenith, Crypto King Supreme, chasing coins and blockchain dreams. At the peak where none diminish, your heights keep rising, they never finish. Well said, sir. Absolute poetry in motion.
Mm-hmm. He is a musician.
Right. That he is. It shows. That's good. That's good stuff. We got to get him hooked up with Twinkie. There's enough musical people in the Pulse Chain space that we could at least have some sort of jam session or open mic thing, and it would be a smash hit. So, we got to get y'all together and get something figured out.
I'll bring the karaoke, man.
There you go. Perfect. Cool. All right. Other than that, it's time to get to what I thought was going to be the main point of the show, but it might just be a side note. But people will be happy to see that I am talking about everyone's favorite, Richard Hart. But Richard Hart's talking about one of the things that's my favorite, which is court cases. I know, riveting, but here we go. We have a Fifth Circuit Judge Jones, Willen, Englehart, and the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit have struck down the administrative state's sanction of Tornado Cash. Quote, contrary to the department's arguments, with the immutable smart contracts are not services. So even when we consider OFAC's regulatory definitions, the immutable smart contracts are not property because they are not ownable, not contracts, and not services. Continuing the quote, we declined the department's invitation to judicial lawmaking, revising Congress's handiwork under the guise of interpreting it. Legislating is Congress's job, and Congress's alone. Accordingly, we reverse and remand to the district court with instructions to grant Van Loon's partial motion for summary judgment based on the Administrative Procedures Act. And here we go, right there. There it is. So, there are many points of note about this case, but I do want to toss it over to another one of our good friends, which is Nuclear Herbs, who runs the Pulse Chain Law School, which is coming up on the 1-year anniversary, by the way. Go show him some love. Excellent stuff. So he's been talking about this since back in May. So going down to the key ruling, Van Loon argues the district court erred in giving heightened deference to OFAC's definition of property and in finding that immutable smart contracts met that definition, we agree. And because that element is dispositive, we need not address the other elements. So what they're saying in this regards, and what he's saying is dispositive is how lawyers say this one thing is enough, so we don't need to bother with anything else. So to get one layer deeper into this, there were a handful of arguments made by the plaintiffs in this case. Because they proved this one aspect, they said it invalidates the rest and we don't even need to talk about it. So that one aspect that they were talking about is they're trying to show that the federal government agency responsible for enforcing some legislation to curtail foreign actors using financial products improperly, effectively, they ruled it out of that, and what they effectively said is that this federal agency is overstepping. So, with that being said, that was a lot of words and not a lot of definitions. So let's explain a little bit more. So, the core of this case is, let's actually do this one. Here we go. All right, so this is from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. This is called the Van Loon versus Department of Treasury case. So you'll see it referred to as Van Loon. Van Loon is one of the 6 plaintiffs that are suing the Department of the Treasury for effectively blacklisting Tornado Cash. And what they're arguing in this case is that you do not have the authority to blacklist this kind of thing because it is not property of a nefarious foreign entity. And that definition of property is the key to this whole thing. And they do get very specific, and they say that immutable smart contracts are not property by the definition and common law use definition of property. This is a very nitpicky decision, I will admit. It's a lot of trying to be like, what does this word actually mean? And does it fit in the definition that has been used previously? I'm going to tell you right now, the whole thing feels pretty nitpicky, but they are correct in my personal opinion. And there's another greater context that I can get to at the end.
Z,
so,
if I could jump in here real quick. The law is about semantics. It's at the end of the day, it's about semantics. This is why they have to use very specific language, which is why Richard Hart makes it a point to use very specific language whenever he speaks about his projects, right? So that he doesn't get caught off guard, right? And so, Is this nitpicky? Yes. But if they can prove that, like, by whatever the definition of property is here, falls within their favor, then the judge is probably going to find them in favor, and they're hopefully going to take the W in this case.
Very true. So, with that being said, real quick, some background for it. What effectively at issue here is the powers of OFAC, which is the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Controls, key agency of the Department of Treasury responsible for enforcing economic and trade sanctions. The legislation that is in question here is the IEEPA, or the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a federal law from 1977. What it does is, if the president declares an emergency in response to unusual and extraordinary threat originating outside the United States, which they also do argue in this case, by the way, which is, why are you saying everything's an emergency? But when that has happened, they do have the powers to freeze foreign assets within U.S. jurisdiction, prohibit transactions involving foreign entities, and regulate imports, exports, and financial dealings tied to said threat. Congress can terminate the emergency through a joint resolution, which, guess what, they haven't. And The only exemption is the act does not apply to humanitarian aid, informational materials, or trade related to personal communications unless otherwise specified. There's a handful of stuff talking about all the different ways this was used, going all the way back to the 80s, even some more recent stuff under the first Trump administration. But the whole point pretty much is this, which is that this was set out to try to stop foreign and bad actors from using financial products or transacting in certain ways that are against American interests. And so what they did by blacklisting it under that IEEPA Act is they pretty much blacklisted Americans from being able to access this product. And what they're arguing is that what the office is arguing is that this is property of a foreign entity or it's being used by someone else. Therefore, we should be able to stop you from doing that. Yep. When they got to in this ruling is they're saying that no, you've been misapplying old law to fit something that you want it to fit. This is the exact same thing that the SEC under Gary Gensler's leadership has been doing with crypto to shoehorn it into old securities law, even though it technically doesn't meet those definitions. It is a new product. It is a new kind of thing with new controls and should get new regulations. But what the SEC was doing is they were trying to just broadly apply existing securities laws to anything that they thought was a security, or in effect, what they just really wanted to be a security so that they could regulate it. This is the first pushback against that. And it comes courtesy of something that I've been shouting about from the high heavens ever since the day it happened, which is Chevron. Chevron deference is this thing that got overturned by the Supreme Court earlier this year, which gave federal agencies a lot of power, because what it effectively did is it made that you could know if whenever Congress passes a law that is somewhat vague or ambiguous about certain things, directing or instructing a regulatory agency, you are not allowed to sue that agency over their interpretation of that law because they're the experts. Therefore, their interpretation should get deference by the courts. So what ended up happening is you had to sue these people effectively on their application of their own interpretation and pretty much like process and procedure, as opposed to the actual interpretation here. But when Chevron was overturned earlier this year, what that does is it means that you now can actually try to fight these people over their interpretation of law, aka if they're poorly interpreting old, vague securities laws. So the case that actually did the overturning is called Loper-Bright. Here we go. In Loper-Bright, the Supreme Court clarified the unremarkable yet elemental position reflected in judicial practice dating back to Marbury, another old court case, that courts decide legal questions by applying their own judgment, even in agency cases. When Congress has clearly delegated discretional authority to an agency, we discharge our duty by independently interpreting the statute and effectuating the will of Congress, subject to the constitutional limits. In effect, the Supreme Court has instructed that we must independently identify and respect constitutional delegations of authority, police the outer statutory boundaries of that delegation, and ensure the agencies exercise their discretion consistent with the Administrative Procedures Act, which is one of the major acts that tell agencies how to set everything up and follow their rules. To do so, we must determine the best reading of a statute, not merely a permissible, to do so, we must, quote, determine the best reading of a statute. A merely permissible reading is not enough, end quote. That right there is the old world versus new world. Previously, the agency only had to do what is permissible enough. They pretty much had to meet a minimum threshold of looking like they're applying to the thing that they were told to do. Now, through this, you are actually forcing the agencies not to just do what they want and within the boundaries of the old thing. No, you have to do the best thing, the best reading of that statute possible. So that is where we get to the thing now, where we have the ability to actually argue these things and really prove in the court of law that no, these things, these smart contracts, these cryptos, these tokens, they are new products. So you should interpret them as a new thing instead of just try to give them the minimal possible reading and just like blanket throw them into securities like Gary Gensler was trying to do through the power of the SEC.
Yep.
So real quick,
do not try and put square pegs in round holes.
Exactly. Or even that it's that thing where you can be a very nefarious actor while still operating inside of a gray zone to effectuate the will of what you want. It's the reason why it seems like sometimes the federal agencies very different in their actions based on who was the president at the time, because the president is putting people in place to interpret the existing authority or the directions to that agency, and how they interpret it determines how they get the agency to act and do things like, I don't know, enforce the rule of law, which seems kind of crazy, but theoretically this should help fix some of that. Real quick, to give some context of more about Chevron and why it's important. Chevron was a Supreme Court Chevron versus Natural Resource Defense Council back in 1984. It actually started off with the EPA. What it originally started off with was the EPA had a vague interpretation of the word, what is a stationary source? So they were trying to figure out, can I regulate an entire chemical plant, or can I regulate individual smokestacks? This is the first time that the Supreme Court back in the 80s ruled that, step one, if Congress has clearly spoken about the issue, then you have to follow Congress's intent. Step two, if no, and the statute is ambiguous, then if the agency's interpretation is reasonable, defer to the agency. But then again, later on, it even gets a little further away from that. It doesn't even allow you to question whether or not the things are reasonable. It just kind of always defer to the agency. We got to a breaking point in June of 2024. We had Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, a Supreme Court case. The background here is that the National Marine Fisheries Services interpreted a Regulatory Management Act to the point where they said that, okay, we are going to require fishing companies to pay to have a federal inspector, or what they call a federal monitor, come aboard their vessel. So you, a fishing vessel owner, have to pay the salary of some federal person to come inspect your business. This was brought through the courts, ultimately to the Supreme Courts, and here we had a 6-2 decision where they actually didn't just look at that case, but they looked at Chevron overall, which was the underlying premise of that agency pretty much forcing a business owner to pay to regulate themselves. We got to that point. So we got a 6-2 decision where they eliminated Chevron deference in its whole. Chief Justice Roberts wrote the majority, emphasizing that the APA requires courts to independently interpret laws rather than deferring to agency interpretations of ambiguous statutes. This is where we go back to what Richard Hart was quoting in his tweet. The part here, this might sound like some legalese, but this is actually a scathing review of both previous Supreme Courts and agencies and the legislature. He says, quote, "We declined the department's invitation to judicial lawmaking," the idea that we are going to make new law through interpreting court cases to set up precedents. This is kind of like how the Howey test got started in the first place. There was a vague law. Ultimately, the Supreme Court at the time said, like, well, we can kind of make this test based on this case, and that'll become the law of the land. That is effectively creating new law through the judicial branch, which, if anybody's read the Federalist Papers, you know that. Yeah, can't do that, and that was never the intention of that court.
They interpret it, they don't create it.
Exactly here. So that's where we get to this little quote right here, which is the scathing rebuke. Legislating is Congress's job and Congress's alone. If you want to have better interpretations, write better laws. That's hard to do because, unfortunately, right now, the way that the legal and government structure is set up is that congressmen are unfortunately incentivized not to stick their neck outs and not to write new, very concrete legislation that you can point back to and hold people accountable. Yep. It's why we see things like continuing resolutions for the budget all the way up to this point, and it's why we continue to see omnibus packages where they just stuff anything and everything into one bill that's 1,000 pages. Remember, it's back to the famous point where they literally wheeled in an omnibus package, and then Nancy Pelosi, who was the speaker at the time, was like, no, we have to pass this before we really understand what's inside of it. That is a crazy concept. You don't just make law and then figure out what you just made law.
Concept.
No. Correct. So it's similar to this stuff. This is where the Supreme Court is pretty much rebuking everything that's going on up to this point and saying, no, we are done with this. If you want better, more concrete laws that will actually have applicable rule of law, do it through Congress the way it's supposed to. No longer will the courts just be making up their laws and allowing the federal agencies, which is really is a rebuke on, because this curtails their power. This whole case is saying that the OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, overstepped their boundary and claimed that things were property when they are not property. And by doing so, they denied people in the United States the ability to access a financial product that they wanted to use. Now, keep in mind, there are probably going to be people saying like, oh, well, the North Korean Lazarus group was definitely using tornado cash to funnel stolen money. Yes, they actually point that out in the court document. So let's see if we can find it. Yep. Lazarus Group or anyone else for this matter using the immutable smart contracts of the Tornado Cash creators, let alone the department, would be powerless to stop them. There is a potential argument that there would be revocable offers prior to 2020, though we see none. So this is one of the parts actually where they talk about how the point of the point that a contract is immutable is part of the reason why it's no longer property. And like the point that I'm trying to get here is they say that, yes, we acknowledge that there have been nefarious bad actors that have used this. Hell, they might have even been the majority of the use of it. But at the same time, you are trying to apply something outside of its original jurisdiction just to get an effect that you want. And that is specifically what they're pushing it back against here. And it's only made possible through overturning of Chevron. And I believe this is yet another pile of rice in the giant heap that shows that the tides have turned and we're actually starting to move and push back against the federal government agencies and the administrative state and actually get some good reasonable curtailing of what has seemed like infinite federal power.
Yeah. It's crazy, Z, because one of the primary rules for Congress is to create the laws, right? And if they're going to defer the interpretation of the laws that they create to three-letter unelected bureaucrats, right, like Gary Gensler, then what happens? Why do we need Congress in the first place if you're going to defer your job to somebody else, right? And so I think that's one of the great significance of the Chevron deference being like overturned, is because now the onus of responsibility once again is on the people who are tasked with creating the law for the United States, right? What the taxpayers are paying you for. Right? You cannot just now push the buck onto someone else like they've been doing this entire time. To be quite honest with you, I'm surprised that it took this long for this to happen, right? But it couldn't have come at a more important time, at least in our lifetimes, right? During the time when crypto is getting mass adoption. So, I mean, that's
right. The timing of this is fantastic because having stuff like this happening in the bull market, we're also getting news that Gary Gensler's stepping down, and we're getting new leadership. This is all very, very good stuff. And the only other, I guess another point of note is this came out of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That is the circuit that governs Texas, Louisiana, and I think Alabama. This is also the same court that we covered last week on the show, overturned another decision talking about how broker-dealers are interpreted by the SEC. Mm-hmm. So this court has been dealing with these issues plenty. And it shows that they actually have a deep knowledge of not just the crypto industry and the securities industry, but also of kind of the original intent and structure of the American government and what it was intended to do, and actually has the awareness to understand where it has gotten to, and that it believes that certain things have been interpreted wrongly, and they're more than happy to reevaluate things and look at it in the correct manner, as opposed to just keep slapping Band-Aids on more Band-Aids.
Yeah. That last week's show was hilarious because according to the SEC, if you're providing liquidity, then you're a broker dealer. You're in trouble, man.
Yeah, for sure. It's there's two kind of points that need to be resolved at the end of this. And by the way, I promise I'll get off the legal soapbox too. Yes, I'm looking at you, everyone that clicked off because I went on my rant. But point number one, is Tornado Cash still radioactive? Yes, absolutely. And those founders are both technically criminals in other countries based on their court proceedings, and they are going to have to go through their process there. This case was
Petrev, I think, is already in prison.
Roman
is still
awaiting trial.
Yeah, awaiting trial. Yep.
Yeah, they're also not in the U.S. either, so it's not U.S. jurisdiction. So is it unfortunate that the founders are probably going to get thrown in jail on this? Yeah, I would argue yes, because I think it is, at least according to the U.S. law, which I am a citizen of, I think it is a misinterpretation of U.S. law. Other countries might have their own laws, and I will respect it. They are their own sovereign entity. They can run their country how they like. However, at the same time, this case was brought by American citizens against an American Department of Government about their actions prohibiting them from doing what they want with their money. I think that is a good thing. At the same time, though, this is not legal advice or financial advice at all. I'm still not going to touch Tornado Cash because I understand that we haven't had the administrative clear out yet.
Yeah, it's still illegal. It's still illegal, guys. It is still illegal here in the States to fuck with Tornado Cash. So
correct. Don't do crimes. And if you're going to do crimes, don't admit to it, especially on camera. So there's that. Final point of note here. We've also been covering the Richard Hart legal case stuff very closely. Some of the arguments made in this case are very similar to the arguments made in that case. Therefore, could they theoretically follow the same path? Yeah, absolutely. This actually is, in my personal opinion, I think this is actually a big boon to the Richard Hart case. Because when they're making the arguments that immutable smart contracts are not property, guess what's an immutable smart contract at this point? Hex, baby. And to some degree, pulse chain, pulse hex incentive token as well. So with that being said, I think it does give credence to that. It's not exactly taking the same angle as like the Howey test and what is securities versus a securities offering. But at the same time, I'll go back to it. The winds have shifted. I think that this is a notable change and a little shift in the pendulum, and we're moving towards innovation and freedom and restriction on government power. With that being said, though, the Richard Hart case is in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. That is the one in New York. That is very, very different than the one in Texas, which has been making these rulings, which I personally legally agree with. And I also have to say that as someone personally invested in these financial products, I probably have a bias. I'm trying to remove it and do the best legal analysis I can. But at the same time, yes, I do have interest in these things. So with that being said, so theoretically, we have Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that gave this ruling. We also have Second Circuit Court of Appeals that could theoretically make a different ruling. If that's the case, there's only one place that gets resolved, and that's up at the Supreme Court. That is how the judicial hierarchy works. Yes, sir. So with that being said, it's not a guarantee that the Second Circuit Court is going to rule in favor of Richard Hart's motion to dismiss, or let alone in the actual case with the SEC, if the SEC even chooses to continue to bring that. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say it again because I'm happy to be a broken record on this one. Crypto is winning. The administrative state is losing. If
this does make it up to the Supreme Court, I think it's an easy dub, to be honest.
I have personal opinions on how the Supreme Court handles itself, and I think that nothing up there as guaranteed as you think it is. I know people like to say that the court is heavily politicized, but I even think that some of the Trump appointees are not exactly like partisans or will always side with whatever the president who put them in office wants to side with. And then on top of that, I'm also not a big John Roberts fan. I think he is a big weather vane, and I think that he goes with whatever will disrupt the court the least. And I think that you see that based on the way he votes and also the way he writes his decisions. So that's my personal take. I think nothing is guaranteed. However, I think the court has gotten to a place where there are more originalists and textualists. And what I mean by that is like the judicial mindset of the people on the Supreme Court. I think Clarence Thomas is supremely based. And is it Thomas? Shoot. I'm probably going to look like a fool here. Yes, Clarence Thomas is still on the Supreme Court. Oh, shoot, I'm thinking of Alito, Gorsuch. I can't remember. Everything I said about John Roberts, I stand by, though. I will say that the dissent on the Chevron case was Justice Alina Kagan. Yeah, she's also not great in my personal opinion and is more of the judicial activist who are severely rebuked by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So there you go. That's my hot take on all that. Disagree with me as much as you want. If you want to roast me on Twitter, do it. Good luck. I don't know. It's Twitter. I don't even pay attention to it that much, but...
No, stellar analysis as always, Z. This is why we brought you onto the team, because you obviously
guys actually brought me onto the team for options trading.
Yeah, that was our first interview with you. Yeah, but we found that Z had a lot of skills.
I just fell into this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, right. So everybody on the team has their strengths that they use to contribute heavily to the growth and to the education of the community, which is why we work so well together. So thank you for that, Z. I'm sure this will not be the last time. Any final thoughts before we round it off here?
The only final thoughts that I have is I'm curious to see what December brings. If your analysis and prediction of the pattern that is the green September continues, then guess what? We will continue to see Bitcoin end the month higher than it started. And there's not much room to go higher without making new all-time highs. So, I mean,
so
come
far,
on.
September ended green,
Yeah.
October ended green, November ended greens. You know? Hey, since we are on alt season, I want to share this to the folks to get you guys
For
a little
sure.
bit more bullish on alt season.
We'll do, but real quick, I got to finish my final thought here.
Go ahead, sir.
Continuing in the idea of things are being bullish, there's a reason that Black Friday is called Black Friday, and that's because typically in the past, businesses have gone from operating in the red for the year to operating in the black, aka being in profit, due to all of the Christmas shopping for the Thanksgiving season. You know, typically in the past, people have been trying to figure out, is this year a bad Black Friday year? Is businesses down? Are people buying less stuff? Answer, they're technically buying more. This is a record $10.8 billion that was spent online on Friday. Notably, it was actually, I believe they say it was it's up 10% compared to 2023 with the data provided. They did say that they did see less foot traffic, but Cyber Monday is expected to generate $13.2 billion, a 6% increase from last year as well. So by this metric, the market looks like it's doing pretty well, and Americans have money to spend, despite more Americans being closer to bankruptcy than ever before. I don't know. We're in a weird false economy. I personally happen to think so. For everybody that caught the book club episode about the Great Wave, as something is predicted, as you get towards the top of a wave, you get this weird K-shaped economy because inflation has gone pretty rampant. So people on the lower end are spending more money on basic resources like food, fuel for like heating your home, and then also having a home or shelter. And then meanwhile, the producers or the asset class owners are experiencing generational wealth. I would argue that's something we're seeing here. So it's lining up with that theory. So stuff like this kind of makes sense, where it's like people are doing poorly, but at the same time, people are still spending money on stuff. I don't know. It's a head scratcher. That's what I got. Jay.
Just like with markets, man. People's spending behaviors also have a cyclical nature to it. People tend to spend money no matter how poor they are, no matter how broke they are, no matter what the economy looks like. They tend to spend money during the holidays. So,
For sure.
it is what it is. Okay, so to kind of top off the altcoin discussion, this is something that I want to share with YouTube because the Telegram, as always, they get it first. Here is the monthly returns for ETH, Bitcoin, since inception. You guys notice here that 2016 halving year. Look at Q4, right? Q4 halving year, red. 2020 halving year, Q4, basically red. 2024 halving year, basically red. So this is your ETH Bitcoin monthly returns, which is what? A proxy for your altcoins. But what happens during Q1, Q2 of the post-halving year? Oh, 2017 from January to June, that looks like it's all green. 2021 post-halving year. Oh, that looks like it's basically all green. 2025, which will be our post-halving year. What do you guys think ETH Bitcoin is going to do post-halving year?
There's a real possibility that it might be, say it with me now, green.
And then for those of you who actually just care about the US dollar valuation, I'm going to switch over to this chart here, Z. So for those who just care about the US dollar valuation, well, we also have a chart there for you. This is the monthly returns for ETH USD since inception. So halving year, quarter 4, pretty red for Ethereum, right? So that's 2016. How about 2020? Quarter 4, okay, did a little better here. This time it was different. All right. 2024, halving year. November seems pretty good for Ethereum. Okay, so it seems like we're recovering quarter 4, right? Which lines up with something that I've been speaking about over the past few weeks, and that Ethereum, if you're expecting Ethereum to have to start gaining against Bitcoin, then you're probably looking sometime November of of the halving year to December, all the way into the post halving year. So let's take a look at the post halving year gains. 2017, from January to August, 32% in January, 48% in August, 220% in March, 205% in May. This is post halving year now. And then a 96% gain in August. How about 2021? Post halving year, 80% in January, 3.2% in February, another 33% in March, another 50% in April. What do you think is going to happen to the US dollar valuation of Ethereum post halving year 2025? Can you take a guess?
Going up.
Going up, baby. So, just it's just another one of those things, right? These charts I wanted to share with the people because they're very easy to see and they're very easy to digest, right? You don't have to go on the ETH USD chart on TradingView and draw all the squiggly lines on it to understand. Like, this is basically a very condensed version of what we just spoke about for like the last hour, me and Z, right? And that Ethereum, ETH, Bitcoin is most likely going to have a green Q1 and Q2 post halving year. And that means that ETH USD is most likely going to have a very good time Q1, Q4 post halving year, which means that your altcoins are probably going to have a very good time in Q1 and Q4 of the post halving year, right? Fucking simple, easy to understand, easy to digest, right? You don't need any more than that, right? Come for the TA if you want a granular analysis. How about that?
There you go. To do the translation of how we get from the nice colorful block chart to the weird candle chart with all the crazy lines that we draw, the answer is it's literally just like taking different snippets. You set your time and then you start and finish. You're like, all right, is this higher or lower? All right, is the next one higher or lower? Is the next one higher or lower? Okay, cool. There we go. Fill it in green or red. Nothing crazy. You can do one. You could probably do the other. I believe in you guys. If you're listening at 2 hours and 10 minutes into the stream, you're probably a pretty sharp dude or lady out there. Yep. Although knowing our metrics, probably dude. But regardless,
we have like less than 1% female audience, which is fine.
Hey, to that less than 1%. Thank you very much.
Yeah. The girls are doing something better with their time, which is, fair. We guys like to talk about, guys like to do money. Girls like to do something else. We're different. It's fine.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't want to say that guys have a tendency to kind of obsess over like less humanistic things more, but like my little brother did come over for their Thanksgiving and we definitely logged 20 hours in World of Warcraft and I haven't played in like 10 years. So I'm just saying. Yeah.
Exactly, man.
We have a tend to fixate.
Exactly. Right. Dr. Peterson always says men like to focus on things and women like to focus on people, which is, it's definitely reflective of our audience here in crypto, right? We like to focus on things, and the thing that we just happen to focus on is crypto and Bitcoin. So,
true. All right. Well, we have tortured the people long enough, or hopefully provided alpha long enough if you stayed for it. There was actually some killer alpha in this show, I got to say. It was, I enjoyed this one personally, not even aside from all the legal stuff, which I greatly enjoyed. But other than that, I hope everyone else enjoyed it, including Funkmaster Hex, who says, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening to you, sir. I'm enjoying a nice black cherry white claw on this evening, and I hope you have a fine whiskey, or if you're part of the folks out there who know, an orange juice with 3 ice cubes in it, precisely. Outside of that, we got Yellowtail checking in. He says, be careful with Pete-Eye. I heard some whale strategy to shake out weak hands. It's entirely possible. Whale games are a thing. They can happen. They can also go poorly. However, at the same time, based on everything I've seen on Richard Heart ecosystem over the last 2 months, it appears that the whales are splashing a little bit. So careful out there. But other than that, he says it is party time.
Indeed.
Sounds like maybe a top of the bull market thing where he says he's going to get the VIP table and invite everybody from the main floor. That's right. Hexskins are probably going to hit the club again, as we always do.
I hope the Hexicans know how to dance, man. I don't want to be the only I don't want to be the only one out there dancing, bro.
It's true. I mean, I don't want to say too much because we got to protect the innocent from all the other times I've partied with the Hexicans, but I would maybe describe it more as like rugby and old school football hooligans. It's just lads being lads.
Oh my god! We go line dancing, so it's a little bit more structured.
That's true.
Take you guys out to a country bar. Take you guys line dancing. That was a bit more fun too.
I'll say this much: I think the 2-step is. I'm not a fan.
It's classic.
it's like a weird syncopated rhythm. It doesn't make nearly as much sense as like a waltz or a salsa or a cha-cha, because just the structure of the timing and the beats and the foot placement. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. Because the two-step is meant for the plebs, not for the not for the sophisticated. My man said the waltz. That's a little bit more, it's a little bit more high end.
It's like a basic square. It just kind of like spins around though.
Yeah, but that's for the people with fancy suits and ties and shit, man. The two-step is for the people, after a hard day's work, go out to the bar, right? Have a few beers with your buddy. Maybe go up to the girl across the bar, ask her to dance, do the two-step with you. She's wearing painted on jeans and cowgirl boots. So, that's my personal opinion.
Look, I'll agree with you as well. I did recently go out to a bit of a honky tonk. Had me a good time. A lot of people are doing the two-step. Was trying to learn the two-step from a buddy, and then an older lady as well also came up and was like, "We're going to solve you out right now." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
There you go.
But outside of that, I will say, in my local area, which is New Mexico-ish, I do think that if you're a gentleman and you're looking for a lady who is not crazy, shall we say, although they might be a little crazy, I don't know. I gotta say, there were a lot of people having good success at the honky tonk. So get out there, have yourself a good time, cut a rug, light up the dance floor.
Yeah, man, and it's way more laid back, right? You go out to a line, like you go out to a country bar line dancing. It's way more laid back, man. People are a little bit more loose, right? So that's my kind of vibe, at least. Like if I'm gonna go out dancing, right, it's probably at a country bar, not like at a club. Like clubs make me want to get violent, bro.
They also just make me want to leave and go to bed.
Exactly.
Although then I don't want to go to bed because then my tinnitus is ringing extra loud. It's like, I'm not about this.
Yeah.
Oh, here we got something. Okay, if Bitcoin is the waltz, Ethereum is a salsa, PulseX is twerking?
Sounds about right.
Well, the founder does that, so we'll just leave it at that.
Yes, sir. That sounds about right. Sounds about right to me.
There it is. We gotta. Oh shoot! I wish I had the clip of Richard Hart on the stripper pole right now, but it is what it is. If you want to see Richard Hart twerk, go check out Highest of Stakes. It's in there. I'm just saying, it is. No lie.
It is in there.
All right, that closes out chats for the evening. Jay, final thoughts. Where can the people find you?
Final thoughts. Strap the hell in because alts are about to take off. I have both the charts on my screen here and I have charts on my trading view on my phone too. So. Double charts, and you guys know how I feel about Aerodrome. We kind of sniped the lows on that, and Aerodrome is ripping faces right now, right? There's basically no resistance to the upside, right? It's just like wicks on prior all-time highs, and I'm pretty happy because that is like the biggest rotation that I made during this consolidation period. So I'm very, very, very happy with that investment. And aside from that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on another wonderful Sunday evening here at the Degen Roundtable. We know that time is your most valuable asset, so we do appreciate that you spend it every single Sunday evening here with us. As always, you can find me on X at that's Instagram. On X at _P90Hex. On Instagram at agent_JSchroth. Like the damn video. Comment, subscribe. Where's our QR code? We don't have the QR code, but if it was there, you scan that QR code. There we go. Scan the QR code. Jump in the Telegram chat. Become part of one of the best communities in crypto. And then just enjoy the rest of the bull market, man. Z, take us out, brother.
We'll do real quick. Sorry, the layouts are different tonight, but Telegram is down in the banner below. Go to that t.me link. It'll get you in there, get you hang out with us. And like Jay was alluding to half the stream, everything we talked about today has pretty much been in the Telegram for like the last 2-3 weeks. So no one over there is surprised. So get in there, get ahead of the game, and hang out with some very cool people. But Jay, you mentioned before, we're in that phase of the market where I think we're starting to strap in, shall we say. I was talking to you, Gerardo, on Twitter earlier. You're talking about the incentive token Golden Cross, second time in history. What does it mean? I said it means this. Strap in, boys. It's moon time very soon.
Yep.
When?
Make sure you got
probably
your
just 2
seatbelts
more
on,
weeks.
man.
Oh, for sure. Exactly. All
Safety
right,
first.
folks. True. Folks, thanks again for joining us. We hope everyone had a very happy Thanksgiving. If you have any funny stories about your family members asking you about Bitcoin or crypto, please get in the Telegram. Tell us. We want to have a good laugh with all you guys. But other than that, you can find me in the Telegram or on Twitter and Instagram at zenithdi. And then Jay said it once, so I'll say it twice. Folks, we know that time is your most valuable asset. So every time you spend it here with us, we want to thank you for it. And until we catch you guys next, we hope that everyone out there continues to degen responsibly.